Thing here. Let's call this meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. Good evening and welcome to the Town of Los Gatos Town Council meeting for November 2nd, 2009. And before we proceed to roll call, I'd like to ask everyone, please turn your cell phones to off or vibrate. Mrs. Rose, if you'll please conduct the roll.
Councilmember Steve Rice.
Here.
Councilmember Barbara Spector.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Pruszynski.
Here.
Vice Mayor Diane McNutt.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Mike Wasserman.
Here. Thank you very much. Joining us tonight for the Pledge of Allegiance are members of the Student Council from Hillbrook School. These 8th graders are all very accomplished academically and with regard to their extracurricular activities. With us tonight are Boo Ewan, Student Council President, Emily Richardson, and Morgan Brost, Student Council members. I'd like to ask those 3 students to join me at the front podium. Thank you. There we go. That works. I'm going to turn this over to President Ewan to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Let's hear it for these fine students. Hold on just 1 second. Just 1 second. You don't get off that easy. These are our leaders of tomorrow. These are our academic leaders, also very, very involved in community service, extracurricular, very well-rounded, wonderful individuals. We have a lot to be proud of in this community, and here's a fine example of 3 of those young people. We have little gifts here for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And please take a moment and shake the hands of each of our council members.
Pleasure. Congratulations. Congratulations.
It's another fine example of how Los Gatos values its youth. Now I'd like to invite the board members of the Los Gatos High School New Millennium Foundation to join me up here as well. Come on forward. We have Bruce Schechter. I got that correct. I did. Joanne Rogers, I understand, is out of town, not able to make it tonight. Michelle Seeger, Tina Orsi Hardigan, Laura Worthington Forbes, and Barry Bakken. Who did I miss? Where's Eric? Eric, welcome. Nice to see you. And? Paula, nice to see you. Thank you for being here. Please come on in a little bit closer. I'd be surprised if there's... I know these people. It's like herding cats. I'd be surprised if there was anyone watching tonight who hasn't heard of this group. Since 2001, this nonprofit has been raising funds to support Los Gatos High students in a wide variety of areas. From making teachers' wish lists come true to the renovation of the theater for performing arts, this group of parents, alumni, teachers, administrators, and community members have made a huge difference. This town is fortunate to have such a dedicated group of people making the quality of the programs and the facilities at our high school their top priority. Please, let's give them a round of applause. And now I'd like to read a commendation to present to the New Millennium Foundation that's been signed by the entire town council. Whereas Los Gatos High School New Millennium Foundation is a nonprofit organization founded by parents, alumni, coaches, teachers, administrators, and community members for the purpose of raising funds to enhance the educational environment for Los Gatos High School students in every area of campus life. Whereas Los Gatos High School New Millennium Foundation was founded in 2001, has 15 members, and since has raised nearly $3 million towards supporting teachers' grants for academics, the arts, athletics, and the Theater Improvement Project. Whereas they have filled 156 teacher grant requests that include complete computer labs, LCD projectors, science equipment, trophy cases, team uniforms, weight room equipment, and cabinets for band instruments, to name just a few. And whereas they have assisted the Theater Improvement Project in raising funds to complete Phase 1 and 2 of their 4-phase improvement project. And whereas the Los Gatos High School Millennium Foundation has held 9 successful auction fundraisers, received donated cars, trucks, and boats, with 100% of the donation going towards the foundation, and they have an endowment fund program that totals $53,000 to date. Now, therefore, the Town Council of the Town of Los Gatos does hereby commend and congratulate the Los Gatos High School New Millennium Foundation for their dedication and exemplary public service to the high school students of Los Gatos. And on behalf of the Town Council and the community, once again, thank you very, very much for what you've been doing these last 9 years. Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome.
No, that Barry's a spokesman. Barry always has something to say.
Well, I'd like to say that our mayor, Mike Wasserman, has helped us at several of our auctions, has done a phenomenal job of supporting the New Millennium Foundation and raising money for the town and the school. So anyway, we have a great group. There have been a great group of people on here since 2001. It continues to get better and better, and we hope to see every one of you guys at our next auction. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you all. Thank you very much. All righty, it's wonderful to start off the meeting with these young leaders that we have, and then to honor a group such as the New Millennium Foundation that exists simply to help our young people. That's why they exist. That's why those people volunteer. It's similar to our service clubs and many, many other organizations in this town that values youth. All right, now we're going to go to the boards, commissions, and committees appointments, and I believe we're going to look to Town Manager Greg Larson.
Yes. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, you received a number of applications as indicated in your packet for every commission. You interviewed multiple candidates for the commissions just a week ago, and during the course of your interviews, one question came up regarding Mr. Ed D's interest in serving on either the Transportation or Parks Commission. He is available and interested in either commission, but he's only submitted an additional application for the Parks Commission. Also, since your interviews a week ago, a current Parks Commission member, Sandy Gordon, has expressed her interest in reapplying for the Parks Commission, but has not done so at this time due to surgery that she was having over the weekend. So, Just wanted to provide you that update. Our clerk administrator, Jackie Rose, is available to walk you through the voting process.
Thank you. Just a minute, please. Vice Mayor McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I'm going to suggest that we not vote tonight on the Parks Commission spot, since we do have some out-of-the-ordinary circumstances regarding the application of both the current and the potential members. And we still have some time for that to re-advertise along with the other openings and come back to us probably the first part of January.
Okay, Council, we have a suggestion. Any conversation or thoughts about that? Councilmember Spector.
She's the vice mayor. I'm just a council person. I agree with the vice mayor. I seem to recall that Mr. D wanted to be on the transportation committee because he associated that with the bicycle committee, which is what he really wants to do. So I would suggest that we defer parks also.
Thank you. I have a question for Mr. Larson. Seems to be we're headed towards deferring parks, which I'm in agreement with as well, as far as leveling the playing field, and we do have a reapplication process to go through. Did Mr. D have an application in on transportation and parking or not?
No, he did not. When we discussed the two committees that appoint to the bicycle subcommittee, both transportation and parking, as well as parks, both have appointees to that commission. When he heard of both of their availability after your interviews, he had a personal preference for the Parks Commission.
Understood. Okay, so Council will be voting tonight on the ones that we had applications for, interviewed for, et cetera, and I'm certainly in favor, and that makes 3.
I am too.
Brzezinski by show of hands. Councilmembers Brzezinski and Rice agree as well. So that's what we'll do. And Mr. Larson, are you doing the readings, or is Ms. Rose?
Ms. Rose will be doing the reporting. I also wanted to highlight for the council that given we did not have any applicants for the Architectural Standards Commission, staff, rather than re-noticing and re-advertising for that commission, would like to review the history of that commission and bring back a recommendation to council for elimination of that commission, since it's our understanding it has not met for at least 2 years. And we now have a professional architect that provides the review services needed for the community.
Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Rose.
Okay, I will be announcing the boards, commissions, and committees along with the number of vacancies and the number of applicants who have applied to each position. Then I will announce each applicant and ask for a vote by a show of hands. After council has completed the vote for the said applicant, I will recap the vote count and move on to the next applicant. Once council has completed the voting process for the commission, I will announce the applicant or applicants who have been selected to that position. The process will continue for each board, commission, and committee during this evening's appointment process. Okay, so the first one is Arts and Culture Commission. There's 3 vacancies and there's 2 applicants. The first applicant is George Havelka. The second applicant is Colleen Wilcox. So both George Havelka and Colleen Wilcox have been appointed to the Arts and Culture Commission. The next commission is the Building Board of Appeals. There are 3 vacancies and 4 applicants. The first applicant is Ed D. Okay. The second applicant is Tom Dodge. The third applicant is Adrian McGrath. And the fourth applicant is David Zikovich. So Tom Dodge, Adrian McGrath, and David Zikovich will be appointed to the Building Board of Appeals. Okay. The next commission is Community Services Commission. There are 3 vacancies and 1 applicant. The applicant is Barbara Cardillo. So Barbara Cardillo will be appointed to that commission, to the Community Services Commission. The next is our General Plan Committee. We have 1 vacancy and 1 applicant. The applicant is Ed D. Okay, so we will re-advertise that one. The next board is the Library Board. There's 2 vacancies and 2 applicants. The first applicant is Deborah Bierman. The second applicant is Lynn Dougherty. Okay, so both Lynn Dougherty and Deborah Bierman are appointed to the library board. The next committee is our Rent Advisory Committee. We have 2 vacancies and 2 applicants. Both applicants are applying to the position for a neutral member, so we will re-advertise the position for a tenant. The first applicant is Ed D. The second applicant is Susan Fish. So Susan Fish is appointed to the Rent Advisory Committee. And our last commission tonight will be the Planning Commission. There's 2 vacancies and 4 applicants. The first applicant is John Bourgeois. The second applicant is Nicholas Constantine. The third applicant is Ed D. And the fourth applicant is Marcia Jensen. So Marcia Jensen and John Bourgeois will be appointed to the Planning Commission. Thank you.
All right now, thank you very much. And moving on, we're now going to head towards council and town manager reports, but I just want to remind everyone in attendance, if you wish to address the council on any item on tonight's agenda or not on tonight's agenda, to please fill out one of these, what color did we call them? Beige, tan, buff? Buff. One of these buff cards right here. And hand it over here to my left to the clerk's department there. And that's 10, that's 11. Okay, we will now go to council matters. Council, any issues you wish to raise this time? Seeing none, we'll turn to manager matters. Mr. Larson.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, just a couple of items to mention. First, Union Pacific repaired their tracks crossing Winchester Road last week, closing the road for much longer than had been anticipated. Staff did not regain control of that throughway until Friday morning, and we completed our repaving work by that evening to try to minimize the traffic disruption. Second, we have started work today on the repaving of Lot 6 on Main Street to incorporate the expanded parking that the council had previously approved. That parking lot will be closed for no more than 1 weekend, and we're hoping less than a 2-week total construction time frame. Third, I'd like to call forward Police Chief Scott Seaman to share with the council a special recognition from the ribbon cutting we did just a week ago. And as he's coming forward, I'd like to acknowledge the police chief and the entire police department for their cooperation as good customers and stewards of public safety in our community in bringing the police operations building to the ribbon cutting, as we acknowledged at the last meeting the Parks and Public Works Department for their leadership in constructing and preparing the property. Chief?
He's still smiling.
They say I'm still smiling. The truth is, the police department is exceptionally proud and pleased to be able to join with you tonight to present plaques which commemorate the ribbon cutting of the new police station on Los Gatos Boulevard next to the Cornerstone Shopping Center. It's an incredible facility. It's one that this department deserves and has been the great recipient of the investment of the town council in creating this facility for our professional use. We're almost through one whole week. We started at 3 o'clock on last Wednesday. The previous Monday, 1 week ago today, the council joined us at the building and with a flourish and with really a lot of ceremony and fun, cut 5 police do not cross ribbons across the walkway. And the scissors that I'm going to be presenting to the council are the ones that, with the exception of the mayor's larger ceremonial scissors, were the scissors that were used to cut those ribbons. And I have to hand it to you, did it just right. The photograph captured all the ribbons came apart at the same time. Perfect. I'd like to say before I present this that this is a very proud moment for the department, but one which we want to share with all of you. And so on November 21st, members of the Police Foundation who are here in the audience are going to be hosting all of you with us on a special community day. And we're going to throw the doors wide open, invite you all down, school groups, scouting groups, soccer leagues, Little League, members of the community to come down and poke through every corner of the building and really try it on, see what is so special about this building and what makes it such wonderful space for us to be able to provide professional public safety services to this community. So mark your calendars now for Saturday, November 21st from 10 to 4. We'll have food there, games, activities, we'll have lots of department members and displays, fun things to do. So I really do hope that you can join us. And it's going to be a very special day for us. But it is my pleasure now to present plaques to each of the council members. And so I'll just do that by moving to each position and thanking them personally on behalf of the department. It is really, I think, a testament to the great work of our department that the council chose to make this investment in our town's future in this very significant way. This is the first public building built by the town of Los Gatos in 25 years. And so we're very proud to have that first building. And in memory of that, or in commemorating that, let me start with the mayor's.
And Chief, that building came in, what's the phrase?
On time
and on budget. And so I have to present to the mayor, all of the council members, and our town manager, Greg Larson, a commemorative plaque, just really a very simple memento recognizing the moment in this town in which they opened their new police operations center. It says at the top, Town of Los Gatos Police Operations Building, and has an engraved drawing of the building, ribbon cutting ceremony, October 26th, 2009. And Mayor, it's with our deep gratitude and appreciation that I present this to you and to each member of the council.
Thank you, Chief.
Vice Mayor McNutt, thank you so much. Councilmember Brzezinski. Thank you very much. You'll notice that a little piece of the ribbon got caught here in the scissors, but it's just an extra flourish. It was really a lot of fun. We actually drove through a line of tape as we brought the mayor and the council members in. Town Manager Larson drove one of the police cars as well. And we did everything we could to stage it at a council member's suggestion. Cut the tape, put a little piece of Scotch tape behind so you know it'll break. And lo and behold, I think it stretched about 30 yards before it finally let go.
It did.
Councilmember Spector, thank you so much. And Councilmember Rice. And I don't know if the story has been told fully. I won't take too much longer, but Town Manager Greg Larson did huge lifting on this project. Came in over budget initially. The economy worked against us, and the project, frankly, was at some peril. Greg had just come in as the town manager, had experience in this area, and working with Todd Capurso, our Director of Parks and Public Works, got the project on track. Got it back, put a very aggressive timeline in place, put controls in that gave us all of the functionality that you would want in a full building, but saving $1 million or more, and got us under budget, actually, for the bid. And it is with our deepest appreciation that we present this plaque to you, Greg. Thank you.
Let's hear it for our Chief of Police, huh? All righty. There we go. And if any of the young people want to go do anything else at all, you're entirely welcome to leave at whatever time's convenient for you. Otherwise, we'll get into the business of the evening here. All right, now it's time that we deal with the consent items. And before the council takes any action, I'd like to ask if any member of the council would like to poll anything. Nope. And I'm going to turn Mr. Korb first. Did you just wait? No? Mr. Larson.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we did distribute 2 desk items regarding the consent calendar that I wanted to enter into the record. One regards page 5 of the minutes of October 19th, which is to clarify that the council did not approve the application that was before you at the time, but remanded it back to the Planning Commission. And second is regarding item number 4, the resolution of agreement with Los Gatos Music and Arts. There was modified language incorporating town representatives in the presentation of MIP concerts, including participation in each concert's opening as explicit language. That was cited in the item. And we also wanted to highlight that on page 1 of the actual agreement, there's a typographical error in that the end of the term is listed as June 30th, 2014. What had been agreed to was a September 30th ending, so that we wouldn't have the turnover of the program in the middle of a performance season. With that, they're recommended for approval.
Thank you very much, and we have those desk items. Council, any questions? Any items to pull? Nope, seeing none. Looks like we have items 4 and 8, so 8A. So we'll call up Citizen Ray. No, you know what? You're right. Good point. I've got 4 and 8 pulled. Council, I'll look to you for direction on the remaining consent items. Anybody? Councilmember Spector.
Move to approve the remainder of the consent items, all of them exclusive of 4 and 8A.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. So consent items except for items 4 and 8A have been approved. And now Citizen Ray, if you'll come on up and speak. And you can speak to both 4 and 8A. Yes, sir. Spice of life.
You're kind of a guy that presents a phantom image. Number 4.
I'm getting right there. Adopting a resolution authorizing the town manager to execute the agreement by and between the town of Los Gatos and the Los Gatos Music and Arts concerning the funding and administration of the Music in the Park program for fiscal years 2011 through 2014. Welcome.
Oh my goodness, guess what? There's nothing on here. Time for the public to speak and you haven't got it turned on.
May have to switch that microphone for the other one if it doesn't work.
Don't you want to hear from me? How come it's always halfway? It's not always
Just,
quite often.
Citizen Ray, stop please, okay? When it's your turn to speak.
I'm expressing.
It's not right that you express yourself and everyone else cannot. Please wait till your time starts, and then you may express yourself. There you go. Thank you, Ms. Rose. You're on.
You know, when the time comes when you're no longer mayor, I will be one who will applaud, okay? Because your persona, to me, is so insulting to we the people, okay? You're all about yourself. All about yourself. Getting back to where I was. Number 4 is, as you explained, Mr. Mayor. And my concern is that I want to be sure the public record is clear on the subject of too much noise. I mean, last year and before that, I'll never forget the little kids out there in front, and when the music was being played, and it was so outrageously loud, all the little kids had their ears covered to protect from the pain. And I have spoken out against that, and I'm speaking out against it tonight. I want to be sure that the new members of this committee understand the kids come first in Los Gatos, okay? And we don't want to penalize them by overdoing the sound at these public get-togethers. So I want to be sure that everybody understands, particularly the committee, that I don't go away, I never give up,
Please address the council.
and I always come back, ready for the kids. And if Mr. Wasserman is still around, for him too. The last item, 8A. When you approved that over my objection, I told you the facts were wrong from the people sitting over there, okay? And I gave you what I remembered as being the truth. And you ignored me totally, okay? And now, tonight, you correct it as I asked you to do.
He gets 2 more.
By correcting the minutes. Unbelievable. That's so sad. That is such extremely ugly in the matter of the process, due process for the community of Los Gatos by certain members of the staff. And it's also interesting, certain members do make mistakes. And when I call it out, why don't you listen to me? Do I ever make a mistake? I can't remember. So, lessons learned, life's lessons learned, possibly, for all 5 of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Citizen Ray. Next we have Jonathan Knowles, also on number 4. And everyone's allowed up to 3 minutes. That buzzer went off at 3 minutes, but since Citizen Ray was talking on a couple of items, we gave him an extended time because we are such a wonderfully fair council.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I wanted to let you know that Los Gatos Music and Arts takes seriously Ray Davis's concerns. And as a matter of fact, maybe we'll do something like encourage parents to not necessarily bring their kids and sit them up on the platform right in front of the speakers, which they were doing last year. But really what I wanted to do was say to you that as the chairman of the board of directors of Los Gatos Music and Arts and as an arts and culture commissioner here in town, that it's been really great working with your staff and our groups to come to this agreement. Specifically, I wanted to recognize Regina Faulkner and her efforts on working this out with us. Been a lot of detail work on this, and she's really stepped up to do it, as well as Arts and Culture Commissioners Valerie Hopkins, Marianne Hamilton, Mary Curtis, Penelope O'Neill, and of course from the Los Gatos Music and Arts side, Terry Hope. This has been a true gathering of the arts minds of Los Gatos to get this together, and then give you just a little update and confidence as to what's going on with Los Gatos Music and Arts going forward. Elke Groves and Joanne Talasfor have both agreed to serve on the board of directors of Los Gatos Music and Arts as well. So we're really reaching out, as we've told you earlier in this room when we've discussed this with you, to be very inclusive of kids programs for arts with Joanne and her connection to the arts programs in our community here in Los Gatos, as well as with our museums, with Elke as the executive director of that program. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman Knowles. All right. We had items 4 and 8 pulled, and that was it from the public, so we'll close the public portion. Council, I'll look for a motion regarding consent items 4 and 8. Councilmember Rice.
I'll move to approve consent items 4 and 8 with the changes that were included in the desk items.
Thank you. And it's 4 and 8A.
Second.
8A.
Thank you. Motion made and second. Any discussion regarding the motion? Seeing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 4 and 8A are taken care of. Now we go to verbal communications, where anyone can speak about anything not on the agenda tonight. And we will start out with Eric Reichwein, followed by Citizen Ray.
All right, hello. I'm Eric Reichwein, and a few days ago I got an invitation from Mr. Wasserman to go to his like dinner foundation thing, or funding for your running of whatever. And I noticed it was at Rick and Julie DiNapoli's house, and it's like a $500 a plate dinner. I thought that was kind of messed up because Rick and Julie DiNapoli were strong advocates strongly against the skate park, and it seems to me that that's kind of a special interest thing going on, and it seems to me it's corruption, and I think that executive power should derive from the mandate of the masses, not from special interest groups to gain personal, financial, and political power. And actually, James Madison wrote in his in the 10th Federalist paper that special interest groups are one of the worst causes of corruption in government. I think we should really watch out for that, and you should really start looking out for the youth. And I know I've read in the newspaper that you say you really look out for the youth, but you're only looking out for a specific youth group, you know, the ones that play soccer, the ones that play basketball. But there is actually a lot of people that skateboard and rollerblade and bike. And I know you spend money against the skate park, and I know that you were a strong proponent of the skate park, and you might have raised the price of it to $1 million. It's ridiculous. Morgan Hill just built a skate park that's way bigger than the one that we're going to have, and it was half as cheap. And yeah, that's really weird. Something's definitely going on in this. You guys, this aristocracy. Yeah, you will build like a $10 million police station that doesn't need one. No offense, Chief. I mean, you had a perfectly good one right here. Build a $20 million library, but you can't even spend a couple $1,000 on a skate park. I mean, you won't even give us a little part of the little piece of land for just me and my friends to build it. Build a skate park for everybody that's going to use it, and there's going to be a lot of people using it. I think you're just afraid that the soccer players and basketball players, whatever, just see the skateboarders having fun and not being told what to do by their coaches. I think you're just afraid of that, afraid of having minorities coming into town from San Jose or something.
Thank you, Mr. Reichwein. Next, Citizen Ray.
Hey, you want to chant right off the bat? Hey, Citizen Ray, what do you say about Halloween Day? Woo! I want to tell you, I did my normal thing in Los Gatos. I welcomed the trick-or-treaters at my daughter's house, okay? What a wonderful experience, all right? And you can't believe it. One of the moms looked at me afterwards. She said, aren't you Citizen Ray? Here I had my dark glasses on, I had a funny hat on, and was trying to, blend into the evening, and I got nailed for being Citizen Ray. I love it, okay? It shows the message that I have is going out into this community. It even comes out on Halloween. Come on, Joe, laugh a little bit.
That is scary, actually.
Going from there, I've been pushing a name for our gorgeous mountain that overlooks Los Gatos. And the reason I'm doing this primarily is because the developers always, when they come down here, they try to marginalize the beauty, the natural beauty of the mountain that overlooks us all. They call it a hill, a lousy hill, when it's a mountain, pure and simple. So let's give it a name. What I'm suggesting is Mount Magnificent, because as we look up to it every day, what is it? Message it gives me? How magnificent it is. I looked up in my college dictionary some wording for magnificent. Of lofty dignity, imposing aspect, stately, and I added, and possessing a breathtaking grandeur of natural beauty. Mount Magnificent. So we'll see where that goes, okay? Next. Beautiful job on the restriping of the town by Mr. Caperso. Beautiful. Boy, everything stands out at night. Gorgeous, okay? However, what has not been done are the crosswalks to the schools. The crosswalks normally get the heavy yellow, and that has not been done.
Thank you, Citizen Ray. Your time is up.
Mr.
Barry
Caperso.
Cinnamon, you're next. Citizen Ray,
Caperso.
don't do that. You know the drill.
Oh, it's
Thank
for
you.
the kids. Can't you?
Barry Cinnamon.
Bend a little bit for the kids.
That's a warning. That's enough.
Oh, a warning.
Carl Guardino would be better going for me. Where do you got it? I'll let Carl go first. He's got a card there also.
He's, because he, the little one? Good evening, Mr. Guardino.
Thank you, Mayor Wasserman and members of the council. My name is Carl Guardino. I'm CEO of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group and a proud member of the town of Los Gatos as well. Address is 489 Bird Avenue. And I'm here this evening to invite each of you to join us and participate in a wonderful community event on Thursday morning, November 26th, Thanksgiving morning, our 5th annual Applied Materials Silicon Valley Turkey Trot. Hi, thank you, darling. And I'm here with Jessica tonight as well. And as you know, the event is held at Guadalupe River Park in downtown San Jose. In just the 4 years of our Turkey Trot, we've been able to raise and donate more than $800,000 to 3 great local charities that help local families in need: the Second Harvest Food Bank, the Housing Trust of Santa Clara County, and the Children's Health Initiative. This year we expect 9,500 participants, supported by 650 volunteers, and if we achieve those goals, we will raise $250,000 for those 3 charities in this year's race alone. And it's a fun and healthy way to start our holiday season when the average Californian gains 6 pounds between Thanksgiving Day and New Year's Eve. So join us. It's a 5K run or walk, and let me stress walk. 2/3 of the 5K participants walk that distance rather than run it. There's a 10K run and our Lucille Packard's Children's Kids Fun Run, which is for ages 2 through 9, including my daughter Jessica. And Chief Scott Seaman knows well and has supported our Fry's Electronic Quickest Cop Fastest Firefighter competition, which we know he will win. And our Perkins Coie CEO Celebrity Challenge, and our VMware Can Do Community Challenge, encouraging everyone to bring 4 canned goods. If everyone does, we'll have 40,000 pounds of food brought forward just that day alone and loaded onto Second Harvest Food Bank trucks. And for the second year, thanks to the generosity of Akina Solar CEO Barry Cinnamon, we will have the Akina Solar Mayor's Cup Challenge. And I believe Mayor Wasserman has already led the way with signing up for the race. So we want to thank you and Kim and the family for doing that and leading by example. And we hope each of you will come out and personally participate and also encourage town employees to do likewise.
And Mr. Guardino, if I may, I believe you've got 6 council members and staff members present here tonight that have already enrolled to participate.
I'm humbled and overcome, and
we're
I
looking to
appreciate
repeat. We got the trophy last year.
It sounds like you're going to get it again this year as well. Well, let me then turn it over to Barry Cinnamon.
Thank you.
While Barry does, I'll pass these out.
Thank you, Carl. As you've just heard, we at Akina Solar are proud to present the 2nd annual Mayor's Cup Challenge as part of the 5th annual Applied Materials Turkey Trot. It's terrific that Los Gatos won last year, and I like the enthusiasm that I'm seeing here for a repeat. The Akina Solar Mayor's Cup Challenge recognizes Silicon Valley cities and towns in 4 categories based on population, and Los Gatos will have the opportunity to compete against Los Altos Hills, and Montessorino. The winning city or town in each category will receive a trophy, recognition at the race and in post-race press, and bragging rights for the entire year. There's a point system that we've set up for this. Participation by the mayor or the vice mayor gets 10 points. Participation by the city or town manager gets 5 points. Participation by a council member gets 4 points, so it looks like we've got a lot of points here. Participation by a member of the planning commission gets 2 points, and I had a discussion with Carl to see if we can do something to invite the town attorney next year also. There are special bonus points that we still have time to earn in terms of sending out notices and emails and doing things in the town newsletter. So I don't want to take any chances. I want to make sure that we in Los Gatos win again. So on behalf of all the employees at Akina Solar and myself, we hope to see you again at the Turkey Trot on Thanksgiving morning. It's a wonderful family event. As some of you may know, I go with my family. We have a really nice jog. The way I look at it is I figure I can burn off 2 pounds and then I can eat another extra pound of turkey dinner. So it's a net positive. We are looking forward to seeing that trophy again on display here in Town Hall. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cinnamon. And again, this council is supporting the Turkey Trot and all the efforts, Silicon Valley Leadership Group and Akina Solar, and encourage all of you to visit their website and participate. It starts real early, it finishes early, you're back in plenty of time to spend time with your family and eat all day long and not miss any football games. So I encourage all of you to participate. It's a wonderful event. That's in what year now? 5th year. 5th year. Congratulations. Tremendous, tremendous effort. Thank you. Now we have Mr. Pietro Dinevi.
Pietro Dinevi. Thank you, Mike. I was here last week and ran out of time, and certainly I wanted to thank you in particular for the meetings and discussions, and of course Barbara when she was mayor, and the meeting with Mr. Rice, and a nice note you wrote me to encourage my project, and talked with town manager, who I called 15 times and he doesn't answer me. Joe, I appreciate, and Vice Mayor, your help and discussions. I think that you 5, I've only been here 83 years, and I knew the first police chief and the second, and I don't know this one, but I know he's good, and I want to do something for the police and firemen. There's a lot of students here. I feel like I'm back in school teaching, but I bet a lot of you would love to see a skateboard park and a golf driving range with
Mr.
discounts
Dinevi,
for the students.
You need to address the council.
And that's what I was trying to do. I have a letter here that I got from the town manager in August, and he said that the council decided that my project, which I described to him in a meeting, and to you and to Barbara, had no merit, and that he asked me to make a presentation of 12 pages, which I did. And there were 3 parcels of land, 3 acres at the Oka Road, Tom Yuki's 8 acres, and 5 acres that nobody in town knows about. 5 acres, blank, bare. Do you know where it is? In the middle of town? How many know? You know. I told you about it. You know.
Tell us.
It's right on Highway
Mr. Dinevi?
17.
There you go.
Highway 17 and Saratoga Avenue. Used to be a trailer park. I got it zoned for a trailer
Dinevi.
park 55 years ago.
You need to address the council.
I'm sorry. Anyway, the letter says that there's no interest in getting 5 acres free. I was going to get you those 5 acres free when you just paid $1 million an acre for land 2 miles further away? A soccer field would fit in there, a park, a skateboard park. I'll get it for you free. I also made an offer, and you talked about $3 million earlier. If you want to participate with me, because I will not do a driving range on the 3 acres, because Bud told me as planning director I don't have a chance. He also told me that the staff doesn't really care what the people think, because half of it, whenever they approve something, people don't approve of it.
Thank you very much.
And Barbara, you also told me that the staff makes the decisions. Well, we didn't elect the staff. They don't
Mr.
live here.
DeNeve, your time is up.
Yeah, well, you also told me.
Thank you very much. You need to stop there and respect the time like everyone else. But thank you very much for
Can
speaking.
I just have 10 seconds?
No, you've gone beyond. That's.
What do you people think? 10 seconds? He got more time than I
Mr.
did.
DeNeve, we need to have the same rules. You can come back.
And I'm not trying to be rude.
Gentlemen.
I think you're the best council in our history.
Mr. DeNeve, I
80 years.
appreciate that, but we've got rules, and we need to adhere to the rules that are fair for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next person up is the Exploded Robots, along with their coach, Rusty Greer. Okay. Hi, Exploded Robots. If you want to, they can pull that microphone out however you like.
No, it's okay.
Exploded Robots.
We are the Exploded Robots team. I'm Margaret. This is Marco Bomarito. This is Sophie Maxfield and James Yost. We are a first Lego League team in this town, and we are doing a project where we have to choose a way to transport something or somebody to somewhere else safely. On Sunday, we are having a competition, and part of it is this project. And so we chose walking to school, and to make it safer, we wanted to fix the problem of the crosswalk at Kennedy and Los Gatos Boulevard. At Kennedy Avenue, we have noticed that almost every time the light turns red, a car runs it. About 80 students cross every day going to school, and about 20 cars run a red light during the 20 minutes students are going to school. We want it to be safer for all the students who cross there, including us going to school.
No problem.
And so we want to get a crossing guard at Kennedy. We have talked about this with Officer Winnell, our Van Meter principal, Mrs. Adana, and others. We know that the draft of Newtown General Plan talks about safe routes for children, and we hope you think about getting a crossing guard for Kennedy. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. And the staff has heard what you have to say, and I think Mr. Larson, our town manager, has something he wants to say.
Thank you very much for raising the issue. We do have a relocation of the crosswalk and new markings and everything scheduled for the renovation of the Thrash House that the council has previously approved. I'll ask the police chief and the director of Parks and Public Works to look into any interim improvements that might be possible prior to that project going forward.
All right. Thank you very much, Exploded Robots. That's awesome. Very well done, very well done. Okay, that concludes the verbal communications portion of our meeting tonight. We move on to item number 9, and we're going to get the staff report from Chief Seaman. Bye. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Scott Seaman, Police Chief. I'm presenting on the issue of a disposal program for unwanted prescription medications, which is commonly known as a take-back program. Oh, excuse me. Before I do that, I'll talk about the state law enforcement
number 9
funds which have come to the town of Los Gatos. And Each year, the town of Los Gatos receives baseline funding, like all other cities in California, of $100,000 to be used for supplementary law enforcement purposes. The town of Los Gatos has received these funds for 13 years, and actually each year we get an additional $100,000 because of our partnership with the city of Montecito. We use that money to partially offset the salaries of 2 motorcycle police officers. And so the item before you is to formally accept the staff report, which will allow us to receive these funds.
Thank you for that staff report. Council, any questions of Chief Seaman? Seeing none, and we have no cards on item number 9, so no other public input on number 9, so we'll close the public portion. Council, look for discussion and a motion. Councilman Przynski.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the continued use of supplemental local law enforcement services funds to provide funding for 2 full-time police officers assigned on motorcycle.
Thank you. Motion made, motion seconded. Looking for discussion regarding agenda item number 9. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. That passes unanimously. Thank you. We now go on to agenda item number 10. And Chief, you gave us a little preview.
I'll be back.
And, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Korb. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be presenting the staff report on item number 10. And before I forget, there is a desk item on this particular item, and it brought to council's attention a letter received, I think it was received today. It's dated October 27th from Kathy and Don Anderson, urging their support for a permanent ban on marijuana dispensaries in the town. As you know, on October 5th, staff brought forward and council adopted a interim zoning ordinance imposing a moratorium on any approval or operation of marijuana dispensaries, medical marijuana dispensaries in the town of Los Gatos. Under California law, a interim zoning ordinance, also referred to as a zoning moratorium, can initially be placed for a period of 45 days, but can be extended thereafter through the adoption of a subsequent ordinance for a period of 10 months and 15 days, which takes it with the 45 days to a total of 1 year, and can be extended by the adoption of one additional ordinance for an additional 1 year thereafter. Staff has brought forward today a proposed interim zoning ordinance that would extend the moratorium for 10 months and 15 days to October 4th, 2010. All the required findings under state law are included in the ordinance. Staff recommends its adoption. The law concerning the adoption of interim zoning ordinances also requires that council have available a report concerning the progress made by staff in addressing the issues that require the adoption of the moratorium ordinance in the first place, at least 10 days before, I think it's 10 or 15 days, it's probably 15 days, prior to the expiration of the existing moratorium ordinance. So also before you tonight is a report prepared by staff of the progress made thus far and the steps intended to be taken in the future. Essentially, the progress made thus far concerns the initial research that has been done on a statewide basis regarding what other cities have done and are doing with regard to medical marijuana facilities, and legal research regarding several of the issues concerning medical marijuana dispensaries. More work needs to be done, and staff will be back to discuss that at a later date. So with that, that concludes my report. I'm available to answer any questions, and the procedure is laid out in the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Korb. Council, any questions of staff? Seeing none, we have one card for this item, agenda item number 10. Daniel Adana.
That's you. It's an opening it right now.
Hello, everybody.
Good evening.
Anyways, I just want to give you a little bit of information.
Sure. If you could speak into the microphone, please, Mr. Adana.
I want to give everybody a little bit of information. If I was allowed to operate, as soon as I'm allowed to operate, I would be giving the city big money from a city tax, that means that tax money will go for everybody that they can spend, and it helps everybody. It helps, this entire town and everybody involved. And that just makes a long story short. And people in this neighborhood, they need to get their medicine in town, not have to drive way out of town in order to get their medicine. And like I said, there's a city tax that the city would be able to get, and we get millions of dollars on a yearly basis, for them to spend however they like to help old people, young people, and everybody, whatever's needed in the town. And so as soon as I can be allowed to operate and you give me guidelines, I can make a proposal, of how I like to operate. Everybody have a nice evening.
Thank you very much. That's the only card we had on item number 10, so we'll close the public portion of item number 10. Look for council discussion. Okay, I can then direct the clerk administrator to read the title of the urgency ordinance.
An interim ordinance of the Town of Los Gatos extending the interim ordinance imposing a moratorium on the approval, commencement, establishment, or operation of medical marijuana dispensaries.
Thank you. And I'm now looking for a motion to waive the reading of the urgency ordinance. Vice Mayor McNutt?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move the waive the reading.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. That passes unanimously. Now we need another motion to adopt the urgency ordinance. Vice Mayor McNutt?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move to adopt the urgency ordinance.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adopt the urgency ordinance. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. And we still need one more motion to accept the written report. Vice Mayor McNutt?
Triple threat here. I'll move to accept the written report pursuant to Government Code Section 65858.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Thank you very much. We now move on to agenda item number 11. And we have Lifetime Oakland A's fan and associate planner extraordinaire, Suzanne Davis, giving the staff report.
Good evening. You have a desk item in front of you that has several letters that came in from neighbors. There's an addendum that went out that had some letters, and then we received some additional ones. And so those are on the desk item. There's also a chart, which we'll put up here, that there's been a lot of questions and comments made about houses and the particulars surrounding those should the subdivision be approved. And there's two types of applications. We're currently looking at an architecture and site application for approval to demolish the existing residence on the property, and then the subdivision application to split the property into 3 parcels. On the left is a list of items that we look at when we're considering a subdivision, and on the right are items that we will look at during an architecture and site approval process for individual homes should the subdivision be approved. The property is located on the east side of Union Avenue, just north of Blossom Hill Road. It has frontage on both Union Avenue, and Panorama Way ends at the north property line at the rear of the land. The property is about 40,500 square feet, and it currently has a single-family home and garage on the site. We have 1 parcel that would be accessed from Union Avenue, and 2 are proposed to be accessed from Panorama. A cul-de-sac is proposed to end Panorama. Right now, it just dead ends at the property, and there's not a turnaround. There's 2 different tentative maps shown up on the wall. The first one is showing a conforming full-size cul-de-sac. The second is showing a smaller, reduced cul-de-sac. That smaller cul-de-sac is supported by staff. It was reviewed by engineering and the fire department. It does provide adequate access for emergency vehicle turnaround, and it has a sidewalk. It is also the same size as the cul-de-sac on Lassoon Court, which is just across Union, and Leawood Court, which is the subdivision just to the south. There is a provision in the code that allows the smaller cul-de-sac size, and it's just something that can be looked at on a case-by-case basis, and if it's determined to be appropriate by the deciding body, it can be approved. We do have both alternatives because that is something that the Planning Commission wanted to see, and it does impact the lots and how they're laid out a little bit and where the houses would sit on the site. So it does work with both, but the smaller street size seems appropriate and would allow a better placement of homes and we could still maintain some view corridors between the existing homes to the north through Leawood Court area so that they could see the hills beyond. The Planning Commission first considered this project back in February and continued it, requesting a plan showing that conforming cul-de-sac, because at the time we only had the middle sheet there shown. Also, a full environmental review was done. We did an initial study and a mitigated negative declaration. The public comment for the environmental document ended in August. The project returned to the Commission on August 26th, and on that date, the Commission decided to deny the application. The Commission made two findings from the Subdivision Map Act, one that the property wasn't physically suitable for the proposed development, and one that it wasn't physically suitable for the proposed density. There have been a number of neighborhood concerns that have come up throughout the process. Those are neighborhood compatibility, including lot size, the lot configuration, and future house size, view preservation, visual impact, privacy, traffic and safety on Panorama Way, and then drainage. We did get I think the council all received this email from Norm Mattioni, who is an attorney representing the applicant. And for the record, I just wanted to read this in because it did not go onto a desk item. The attorney points out that the two findings that the Commission made, specifically that the site is not physically suitable for the proposed development and the site is not physically suitable for proposed density, he disagrees with that, stating that the lots meet the minimum lot size from the zoning district, which is R18. The minimum lot size is 8,000 square feet. The lots are in the 10,000 square foot range. And that the land is very regular in physical properties, so it is appropriate for the proposed density. The staff report includes all the provisions for overturning a Planning Commission decision, and should the council decide to approve the application and grant the appeal, the negative declaration does need to be made, and a mitigation monitoring plan would need to be adopted. There are required findings for demolition of the single-family residence, and you would have to determine that none of the state subdivision map act findings can be made. Those are kind of reverse findings. If you can make those findings, it's grounds for denial. And then there are two applications to be approved: the architecture and site approval for demolition of the residence and the subdivision application itself. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer those.
Thank you, Mrs. Davis. Start Vice Mayor McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Davis, I think it would be really helpful for me and perhaps others if you could go through this list, in particular the left column, and describe what does each one of these items mean.
Okay. For a subdivision application, we are looking at lot size. The zoning code has a minimum lot size. It's 8,000 square feet in this particular case. That we're looking to that once the property is split, any streets or right-of-way areas that go in are deducted. And there's a pretty substantial right-of-way dedication being done here. We have a 25-foot right-of-way along Union Avenue with 110 feet of frontage, and then the area where the cul-de-sac bulb is proposed. And when that's all taken out, the lot's in the 32,000 square foot range. So they still need to come up with 3 lots that are at least 8,000 square feet, which is the case here. The configuration, there's a lot of different lots, sizes, shapes, and configurations in that immediate area. And we do look at the properties surrounding it, 360. So there's a little bit of an unusual situation with this particular subdivision in that it's showing a lot that appears to be a flag. It is not technically a flag lot because there's a definition of that in our town code, and this one is not defined as a flag lot. It's required to have 30 feet of frontage on a cul-de-sac, which it does have. The particular configuration shown here was proposed by the applicant to provide a better buffer from the immediate residence to the north by having that corridor for a driveway there. The setback has to be from the property line, and then it's going to push the houses further away from that north property line and create a better separation between the homes. It also is done in that manner to provide a shared driveway. The shared driveway is not a requirement. It was something proposed by the applicant to try to reduce the amount of impervious coverage. They can have two separate driveways if that's preferred, and not have a shared driveway. Lot depth is another thing we look at. There is a minimum lot depth, and there is a chart in the staff report, one of the Planning Commission staff reports, that shows you the minimum lot depth and that they've met those. We look at access. Obviously, we have to have access to all the properties, and that is the case here. Frontage, minimum frontage on a street such as Union is 60 feet, and that's why the property can't be split in a different manner along Union. You can't get two lots fronting on Union and meet the 60-foot minimum frontage. We have 110 feet of frontage, so it falls short there. The cul-de-sac allows a 30-foot frontage, so you could do it in a different manner. You could do a diagonal and split those lots a little bit differently. This is the applicant's proposal, and it does meet the technical requirements of the town code. Cul-de-sac size I've already discussed, so I hope that was adequate. Utilities, we are looking at they can provide all utilities, which is the case. There are some easements in place already for utilities, and all the required utilities can be provided to the lots. Easements, those are simply, we do put easements in place for provision of utilities on the property. Engineering is the one that reviews that. It's done as part of the analysis on the map, and when the map gets recorded, the easements will be part of that. And that's just to ensure that we can get access for maintenance purposes, and the utility companies sort of have something to say about that. And tree impacts, we do look at tree removals, and those have been shown on the plan. We did do an arborist review on this, and that is incorporated into the environmental review. Replacement trees aren't being proposed at this time. We would look at for replacement trees with architecture and site applications. We would look at landscaping, fencing, outdoor lighting that's being proposed. House placement, that will be dictated somewhat by the fact that you can see building envelopes on the plans you have in front of you. The dashed lines are showing the minimum required setbacks. So that leaves you with the envelope where the house could potentially be constructed, house, garage, any structures. So the placement will be within that building envelope, but the configuration itself will be looked at with architecture and site. Sizes, we have maximum floor area figures that are based on our FAR formula in the code, and that'll give us a maximum number based on lot size and lot slope. In this case, the lots are under 10%, so it'll be just straight FAR formula. There's not any deduction for slope. There'll be a maximum size for house and garage. Doesn't mean they'll propose the maximum or that they'll get the maximum, because that's part of the evaluation when you look at the bulk and mass, the placement, visual impact, things like that. Building height, the maximum would be 30 feet. Number of stories is what you can fit within that maximum height. And again, the maximum height is a maximum. It's not anything that says you can absolutely have this. We still look at neighborhood compatibility. So we'll look at heights. What are, number of houses in the area that are 2-story versus 1? What type of height are they at? Is this compatible with those? And then the specific driveways and the turnarounds we'll look at with the approval. The property on Union will be required to have an on-site turnaround so that someone can back the car out of the garage, turn it, and head out forward onto that street because it's a very busy road. The others can potentially back out into the cul-de-sac from their driveways. But we will look at the actual placement and configuration with the ANS applications. And I think I got everything on there.
Thank you.
Good for you. Good. Any other questions? Councilmember Spector.
Thank you. You mentioned the architecture and site approval. If this subdivision were approved, where would the architecture and site approval be heard? At the Planning Commission or where? We
would typically do them with the Development Review Committee, but if we had issues with neighbors that we were not able to resolve, we might move it up to Planning Commission for that reason. Staff always has the discretion to move something to the Planning Commission if it's appropriate, and given the history of this one, I would expect that we'd probably be forwarding some of these to the Planning Commission for consideration.
All right, and one other, if I might.
Absolutely.
Parcel 2, you were talking about the, I think you said 30 feet of frontage, and it's not clear to me where that 30 feet of frontage is. Is it the driveway onto the cul-de-sac? I mean, the driveway onto the, cul-de-sac?
It's the property line along the cul-de-sac, and you can see it kind of curves a little bit. If you look at straight distance across it, it is 26 feet, but if you look at the front property line, it's more than 30.
So the 30 feet of frontage comes from the driveway, correct?
At the edge of the right-of-way, correct.
Right. And so that would apply even though the driveway serves more than 2 parcels?
Yes, because it doesn't need to. We don't have to have a shared driveway. That's just a proposal.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rice.
Just to follow up on Council Inspector's first question, if we were to add that as a condition, we could add as a condition that any A&S goes to the Planning Commission, correct?
I believe you can do that, yes.
Thank you.
Or just as direction to staff and not as a condition to the project, either way.
Mr. Brzezinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question I have is regarding the cul-de-sac, the two widths that are proposed. The larger width is the standard, town standard, correct?
It's actually the right-of-way. There's 2 things going on. We have the right-of-way is being slightly reduced. The cul-de-sac bulb itself is slightly smaller. That is true. It is normally 42 feet would be the maximum or the minimum size we'd look for a conforming cul-de-sac. This one's 32.
And what is the reason why the staff recommended the smaller?
We felt it was appropriate to serve those 2 lots off the cul-de-sac. I don't know the exact number of houses on Panorama, approximately 10 or so. It seems to fit into the neighborhood with the other cul-de-sacs in the vicinity. And that one street, Cambrian View below, got that funny half-shaped turnaround, which was something we probably shouldn't have done. I think the original intent was for these 2 streets to be joined. It would have just had a curve and they would have connected.
But they didn't.
They didn't. And that prior subdivision got approved in that manner and precluded them from doing that.
Okay. But we have some comment from the public regarding a preference for the larger cul-de-sac, the standard cul-de-sac. What impact does that have on the way the subdivision would be defined at that point?
They could still meet the minimum lot size with the larger cul-de-sac. What it would do is, because the property line would push further in, it would push to the west, it would push the setbacks and then subsequently the building envelope. So your house placement would be shifted, and it would shift the houses more into the view lines that the applicant was trying to preserve.
So everything gets shifted more to the west?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no more questions of staff, we'll give the applicant now up to 10 minutes to make their presentation. Appellant. Applicant, appellant. One and the same.
My name is Tony Jeans, 170 Stacia Street, Los Gatos. I'd like to answer your question a little more fully, Mr. Brzezinski, first. The actual street turnaround are identical on both proposals. There is a sidewalk on both proposals. What we are eliminating is the planter strip between the curb and the sidewalk so that we can retain better viewing from the neighboring homes. Safety would be identical, no problem. Parking requirements would be identical in both situations. This is the neighborhood. The box that we have here shows the area that I have to consider when I'm looking at how to develop a subdivision, taking into context the neighboring homes. What I'm looking at and what I've shown here are the lot sizes on all of the neighboring homes, just so that you can see in context. They range from the smallest of 8,000 feet to larger ones of about an acre, predominantly here around 10,000, here in the 8 to 18,000. We chose two lots of 10,400 and a slightly larger one on Union because we thought that we would try to get a single-story house on Union if that could be achieved. When we originally looked at a subdivision, here is the obvious way to do it. If you look at a street here, such as Leawood Court, you have homes progressing down the cul-de-sac and a series of pies at the end of the cul-de-sac. We could do the same here on Panorama. We would split our diagonal. We would have two homes here, and everything would be fine, and we may or may not be sitting here in this meeting. We wouldn't have the concern of possible flag lots. We would have a very straightforward 10,000 foot situation. But given the way the neighborhood is developed, it didn't seem right. And the reason it didn't is I went to talk to the neighbors, one of whom is here, and he expressed a great desire to keep his view between the taller homes on Leawood. So I said, I'll try and do that. Also, there is, for a neighbor up here, a very nice sitting area, and she wants to continue to get light in that sitting area. So I said, how can I try to achieve something that fits within that context? I also looked at the general layout of homes in the area. To the north, or rather the south, this is upside down, you have 3 homes in a row on Leawood. You have 3 homes on the other side of Leawood. You have 3 homes between Panorama and Union. 15908 is a rental, 15910 is a rental. On one of the properties, 112, Mr. Mangano is here. You have 2 homes, but pretty much a series of 3 or 4 buildings on each of these sites, going all the way down. And what I was trying to do was take into context that repetition of 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, and say, oh, maybe I'll do that here. And if I can do that, that will give me an opportunity to give Mr. Mangano his views between the homes. When you blow this up a little bit, looking at the design context, excuse me while I take some gum here, I have a dry mouth. I'm looking at the separation between homes. One of the things you have to be careful of when you put a home between homes is how much separation do you have from neighbors, how much separation do you have between the homes themselves. You'll notice that one of the things I'm achieving is 50 feet of separation from Mr. Mangano's kitchen window to the closest home. If I did a conventional subdivision with a cul-de-sac and a diagonal here, there would be 16 feet. There would be almost necessarily a 2-story house here, right 8 feet from the property line, instead of 50 feet of separation. If you look generally at all of that, you'll see how well spaced out it is. I've got no privacy issues on any side whatsoever. Additionally, we're keeping the sidewalk. The neighbors really need that. Mr. DeBella said his fence would get knocked down if we didn't. I absolutely agree with him. This paved cul-de-sac area allows parking. It's the minimum allowable turnaround area that allows parking, and we're doing that so that we can retain that view. If we have to push all of these homes along, then Mr. Mangano will be looking at buildings instead of between them. There is concern about a possible flag lot. There is a picture from one of the neighbors as to what a flag lot would look like. This is what we're proposing in concept. We haven't designed it. We haven't submitted it. Here is Mr. Mangano's house. Here would be a shared driveway going to the first house. Going through to the second house, we would design a low-profile house. I call it a 1.5 story, but in essence a low profile, maybe 22, 23 feet high instead of 30, and give 50 feet of separation that I've been stressing and is, I think, very appropriate at the end of that cul-de-sac. Some of you don't like shared driveways. So, we can eliminate the shared driveway. You can come straight down to the house here, plenty of turnaround space, and we can put a driveway and the garage at the end of the cul-de-sac. But unfortunately, the people who drive down Panorama will now be looking at parked cars instead of a nice area of greenery, which is what I had spoke to when I'd spoken to several of the neighbors early on before they decided they wanted to object to the project. They conveyed to me that they liked being able to go down and see greenery here. So I thought, okay, very appropriate for me to go with a shared driveway. What it does is it eliminates a big chunk of impervious coverage, makes it much easier for the land to absorb the water, makes it easier for the drainage to be dealt with. The drainage, by the way, we are dealing with an underground pipe to Union, and making this surface drainage run down the driveway to Panorama. So we've covered that fairly well. Do you want to say a few words, Norm? A couple of legal comments.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Norm Mattioni on behalf of the appellant. I just wanted to stress the points that I made in the email to you as well as my letter, and that is the focus in the Subdivision Map Act for the basis of, thank you, denial, if that were so chosen, and the commission chose denial with, in my judgment, no substantiating facts. It simply went to the findings C and D of the Government Code section 66474 that talk about the site. The configuration of the rectangular parcel is not physically suitable for the type of development. Nothing to back that up, but they made that ultimate conclusionary finding. And then again, the site, the rectangular parcel that we've been looking at is not physically suitable for the proposed density. It works for the proposed density. It exceeds the minimum lot size. There's been some talk that maybe you're supposed to look, and I know you always do, and you'll hear from the neighbors in terms of compatibility. The Subdivision Map Act, in my reading on these findings, does not talk to the compatibility with the neighborhood, except as to subpart B, that the design or improvement of the proposed subdivision is not, you'd have to find it is not consistent with the general plan of the town. It's the general plan of the town that is to establish consistency of neighborhoods, areas for development. And so I give you those findings for your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions at this time, council? None. Okay, that's the first portion of the applicant's ability to address this agenda item, and now we'll turn to the public. And I have about 8 different cards here. We start off with Citizen Ray, followed by Stephanie, and I'm going to say, why not? With an L? With an L. Why not? And you're up second.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Citizen Ray, I'm doing them in the order that I've got them, and your turn is up, and we can't move things all around and around.
I'm always first with you. You make me mad. And nothing wrong with that. You know, I'm so sick and tired of, I've been doing this off and on for 40 years. And I hear these self-serving attorneys show up to speak for the applicants. And their only interest is the dollar bill. Dollar bill. It is so ugly. And you can put this, what I call the prostitution of the public land use process of Los Gatos, that has been done regularly by certain members of the town council, Brzezinski and McLump. And now we've got Stevie Weavy Rice here, okay? Typically supporting the prostitution of the land use process. And the proof that I give you, the property tax total for this now, for the town of Los Gatos, is $8 million. $8 million in 1 year. The retail from this the wonderful retail shopping center of Silicon Valley, which Los Gatos is but 1 million more. That illustrates what you've been doing to the land use process of this town. Prostitution. I say you and you are public prostitutes, okay? Peepees. And that's what I'm going to call you. It's an acronym, peepee. I'm calling you 3 peepees. It is so ugly what you're doing to the town. All for the dollar bill. And when are you going to stop? Also, you heard this lawyer get up there. He's trying to make a buck, okay? You heard him talk about what he thought the planning commission should do and shouldn't have done. Why don't you do like every other community I've ever lived in? When there's an appeal from the planning commission, you bring the chairman of the planning commission up to answer questions, to offset the nonsense the lawyer makes for the buck, okay? Why don't you do that? Only in Los Gatos does this exist. In the 40 years I've been doing what I do, only in Los Gatos. Because it's always been a matter of the dollar bill here. The dollar bill is all that rules, okay? And are you going to do the same thing to this tonight? I'll bet you are. I'm betting money.
Thank you,
$100 bucks.
Citizen Ray. Stephanie Lynott with an L. And Ms. Lynott will be followed by Ian Esch. Is there anybody named Smith here? No. Okay. You're up, Ms. Lynott.
Thank you. My name is Stephanie Lynott. I reside at 15910 Union Avenue. I have lived there for 10 years, and I'm on the half acre that is adjacent to the property proposed for development. I think I'd like to clarify one thing very quickly on the structure that was given on these rental my garage, in the back of the garage, there's a small room that's for rent. It's not like there's big residential buildings going down these neighborhoods. They're garages that are detached, but they're not a separate structure to the house other than one room in the back of the garage on my property. What is compatible to the neighborhood are, the lots were originally acre lots that were split up, and they go very parallel to each other. Leawood and Lowson seem to be subdivisions that are totally separate from what is going on down this given property is that's being spoken of. So I think what we're doing is, I don't think we're asking for anything not to be built. I think that we just want something that's compatible with what is going on in the neighborhood, and it is single-story, one house per lot developments that are going on there. I'm hugely impacted by the development. Tony and I have had a number of conversations, and I appreciate his concern for the losses that I will be having. My 2 bedrooms, bathroom will now become a garage wall and a fence. That will be my view. The back section will be taken away from the houses there, and I know that he's trying to leave some corridors open to that. I just feel that, somebody's financial gain is going to be our loss in the neighborhood with privacy, views, lighting, traffic. I know the back 2 houses are proposed to be built first. That'll be a few years, and then build the one up in the front next to me. That'll be another couple of years. So you're talking about many years of development. We look at the Tersini development across the street. The town required the house that fronts Union Avenue to be a single-story house to be compatible in the neighborhood. That is just gigantic. I'm sure you have seen it with the sound wall. As I said at the last meeting, we've got 40 cars deep from Union 85 with a sound wall in this gigantic side of a house that's a single story. We get very concerned about that, anything more than a single story. So I think basically what I want to just say is that it needs to, I think this has become such a huge issue because something is trying to fit in that is not meant to fit in. And this is the house that's being proposed to be plopped in the middle of the established area of what is going on. And, as much as I think people have the right to develop and to make their living, I just think that somebody's financial expense or advantage is going to be to the big disadvantage of others, from traffic to views to lighting and everything, just
Thank you.
compatibility.
If you could hold for a minute, please.
Yes.
Do you have a question, Councilmember Spector?
Yes.
You did. Go right ahead.
Thank you. I just need a clarification from your testimony. You were talking about, you mentioned single story, you mentioned 1 house per lot. If we assume that the 1-story versus 2-story is an issue that will be addressed at the architecture and site process, and so now we're doing the subdivision, are you talking about you want 2 subdivided in 2, subdivided in 3, or you don't care? That wasn't clear to me.
Okay. I think to be compatible with the neighborhood to 2.
And that's based on what?
What's already existing on Union Avenue and on Panorama.
Okay. Thank you.
It's split with the 2. If it goes to 3, I think a single story on Union is a must to be compatible with, and even the Tersini development in the town, or I don't know who decides this stuff. The Planning Commission, architectural design, whatever.
Thank you. I have a question for you as well. Council, any questions? No. My other question for you, and I appreciate your presentation and your perspective. What's before us tonight is the appeal of the subdivision, and has discussed, as was discussed and mentioned earlier, and Councilmember Spector just hit on it again, and Councilmember Rice also mentioned it, that direction can be given to staff regarding architecture and site, that it goes before Planning Commission, or however this council wishes to do with that design. It's kind of the right column, if you will, of what was up there.
I saw that.
On the left column, I'm going through there, I'm looking at the zoning, I'm seeing lot sizes to be a minimum of 8,000, it's 10,000, lot depth is met. Going down each of the items thank you, that are the conditions for which we are to evaluate the appropriateness of a subdivision. I'm having a hard time finding where the proposal of 3 lots doesn't meet or exceed all of the town's requirements for a subdivision.
I understand that, but I look at configuration, and the configuration is really what's creating the biggest problem here. How do we get into that middle lot? Whose road do we go on? Do we go Panorama? Do we go Union? How do we get into that middle lot? And to me, that's configuration. That's flag lot. That's how do you get into the middle of here, because it's not designed for that.
You're talking about the shared driveway off the cul-de-sac?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Lot depth, it's very long. It's not that wide, but it's long. It's narrow. Access frontage, obviously you're going to have access. One is off of residential, and Union Avenue is just a kind of a free-for-all these days.
Okay. And thank you. I understand what you said.
Utilities I do get concerned about, because there are 2 power poles in the front on Union Avenue, and where are those going to go? I know that Tony's been, very cooperative about that, but I think PG&E decides that, if I'm not mistaken, where utility poles go or remain.
Yeah, that's not really the issue that we're talking about. What I was referring to was staff's response to each of those as far as meeting our requirements. That's what I'm kind of grappling with. But thank you very much for your thoughts.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Ian Esch? followed by Thomas Mangano.
Hi, my name is Ian Esha. I live at 107, not to worry, 107 Panorama Way. I think one of the things I appreciate about the process that we went through with the Planning Commission was not just that they sided with us twice, but that they gave it deep consideration and understood that this is a unique and rather odd lot that is kind of chock full of different problems, if you will. I think we're all a bit stung by the development just above this lot that was done before I moved into the neighborhood. That is Leawood Court, which is kind of a blight because they built up the ground several feet, which I guess was one of the things they told the neighbors they wouldn't do. And then it blocked quite a bit of the sightway for everybody who lives along Panorama Way. Our neighborhood itself is very much a rancher-style houses. They are predominantly one story. On our street, they're all one story. So what we have, I guess my major point all along is I've wanted these houses to be an integral part of our particular neighborhood. The argument has been made that it is part of the neighborhood, the Leawood Court neighborhood, or the, I believe it's called Tersini across the street, which is a real eyesore. It's kind of like a compound, the way it's done with the sound wall and the flag lots and everything else. It really doesn't look good. So if you get into that area right now, I think your first thought would be, I must be in unincorporated Los Gatos now, and it's been a free-for-all of building. That is obviously a concern with me. I would like this to fit into the neighborhood. I look at what happened over on Taft, which is across Union and just a couple streets over. This is right near Union Middle School, which is really part of our neighborhood as well. There have been 6 monster homes, all 2 stories, built on an area that used to be a daycare. Obviously, I'm not trying to stop anybody from developing land, but I want them to do it smartly. I want them to do it with consideration for the rest of the people in the neighborhood. I want this to be something that is a place that we're proud of and doesn't just look like yet another monster home has been stuck in that place. So that's been our situation of coming together as a neighborhood and trying to keep this to be a smart development. Yes, please.
A minute. There you go. You've got at least one question.
Same question for you, and maybe this is the question I'm going to give to everybody unless they make it clear initially. If we assume architecture and site will determine the size and height of the home, what is your input here with regard to the subdivision? You want no subdivision, you want 1, you want 2, you want 3. Where are you on that issue? It was not clear to me.
I really believe 2 homes would be prudent here. I can understand him wanting to build 3. I just look at it from the perspective of how the lot is laid out. It is a very strange lot because it's long. It's quite, if you take the square footage as it is, it's quite sizable. However, if you look at the layout of it, it's long and very narrow. So the talk is, if they have to change the bulb itself, that pushes the houses west. So that should give you some idea of how small this particular lot is as far as the depth. So if we have a shared driveway, I wouldn't want to live in a place where it shoved 3 houses into a small area. And I imagine I've got to go to Citizen Ray here. He's talking about the money, and this is pretty much all of a sudden it becomes a bit of a grab for how many houses can we stick into this property. So yes, the Planning Commission looked at all of this as far as the land, the size, the square footage and everything, and they saw where this was problematic, and hence why it has been come to this point of being on appeal.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And a question I have for you. You live on Panorama Way?
Yes, I do.
It said, I have it in front of me somewhere, not which map it is, but those lots on Panorama, they're 8,000 square feet?
There's a little variance in them, but they're approximately 8,000 square
7
feet.
to 9, somewhere, whatever, in that range. Your comment a minute ago was being too many lots on that piece of land, and each of these lots would exceed 10,000 square feet. So each one would be larger than what's on Panorama.
Yes. We're not, the way we're laid out, we're a very structured neighborhood. I mean, clearly, we're talking 1960s grid neighborhood with ranch houses on it. This is now shoehorning, yes, thank you, shoehorning these houses into this other lot. That is rather unusual. I mean, there's been plans, apparently at one point they were going to build a street through to Union.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily enough, I mean, we're very happy that we live on what's dead end or a cul-de-sac, and that didn't happen, so that's good for us. However, now you are talking about bringing in more traffic into the area. You're talking about bringing in additional 2 houses worth of additional cars. That will need parking and such. I'm less concerned even with looking at a garage at the end of the cul-de-sac there than looking at 3 or 4 cars parked around that bulb. Be that as it may, our houses are very grid-like laid out. These would be, you notice the configuration, one house is on an angle like this, one house is over here, and then a larger house on Union. It's an odd setup, and it's going to look like houses were shoved in there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thomas Mangano, followed by John Schwartz.
Good evening, I'm Tom Mangano. I've lived at my Panorama house for 34 years, and I'm adjacent to this Union Avenue project. The Planning Commission concluded this 3-partial proposal cannot be approved because it does not comply with Los Gatos General Plan Section LP 3.8, which explicitly discourages the use of quarter lots. As you can see from this slide, partial 2 is the perfect illustration of a quarter lot. This 26 by 91 foot quarter of land does nothing beyond creating access for partial 2. It does not give partial 2 home presence, nor does it serve as any part of the partial's required setback, which is normal for any 30-foot cul-de-sac lot. Additionally, General Plan Section 1.39 establishes 4 criteria that must be met for a quarter lot to be considered. This proposal meets none of the 4 criteria. Number 1, it does not decrease the amount of public streets required for this subdivision. In reality, it increased it. Number 2, it does not contribute to the surrounding neighborhood. Number 3, it is not in the context with the existing scale and established character of the neighborhood. This proposal reminds me of Cinderella stepsisters trying to cram their big feet into a tiny glass slipper. There's a distinct and consistent pattern of smaller lots with garages facing Panorama Way, deeper lots with garages facing Union Avenue. And finally, number 4, the quarter fails to benefit surrounding properties. It creates a shared driveway adjoining my patio, giving me the view of 2 double garages plus a non-mitigated noise. Therefore, this quarter fails on all 4 criteria that would qualify it to be even considered. The developer purchased this property with a desire to build 4 homes, now 3. Unfortunately for the developer, it's the job of the planning commission and the town council to uphold the town's general plan and protect the visual harmonious.
Thank you, Mr. Mangano. Appreciate that. We have Mr. John Schwartz. Oops, we have a question. Mr. Mangano, just a minute, please. Question from Vice Mayor McNutt.
Thank you. Mr. Mangano, I wanted to talk to you about the cul-de-sac and the size of the cul-de-sac. We have two different sizes proposed should the subdivision be approved, and staff has said that the actual street area of both of those is the same in terms of having enough room to move around. The larger one changes the location of the house, which directly impacts you.
Correct.
What is your opinion on the cul-de-sac?
You looked at Mr. Jeans's.
Could you get a little closer to the microphone?
I'm not sure that it's still on.
Thank you.
Is it on?
If you looked at Mr. Jeans's corridor view thing, he actually showed you that I had a bigger view looking east than I did west. And then he turns that around. And so if you do push the houses to the west, that actually increases my views to the east. So he has given you a distorted view of what pushing houses west does. So I am in favor of the biggest cul-de-sac possible because I want to get that middle house as far away from me as possible. And I want that first house, if all three are going to go, I want that first house pushed back. I want the bigger cul-de-sac. I do not want the small cul-de-sac, as every person on Panorama Way wants the bigger cul-de-sac.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you. A couple things. The applicant, when he made his presentation, mentioned you several times, and so I wanted you to speak for yourself. The presentation was that the lot configuration will help your view shed, so I wanted your input on that. And secondly, won't your view shed be impacted by a fence, which I'm assuming is going to have to go up no matter what happens with the subdivision?
Okay, to the first point, Mr. Jeans came to knock on my house unannounced in mid-October of last year. He was trying to be the good guy and showed me a possible three-house plan that I agreed was better than the four-house plan. But what I left with him that day was that I was more than willing to work with him on the placement of those houses and further develop it. Okay, he ran with that and never had any conversations with me on house placement after that. Additionally, I'd like to just say that his 50-foot number is from inside my house envelope, very distorted number, that 50 feet. And what was your second question?
Second question is, you're talking about view sheds, but
right.
Won't a fence?
Obviously, a 6-foot fence will put my view shed higher, and I understand that. Okay, my big concern is I'm going to lose the view shed. I know that. I'm well aware of it. But this three-house scenario that he proposes is the optimum worst case for me.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. John Schwartz, followed by Jeff Mitchell.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Town Council. My name is John Schwartz. I live at 104 Panorama Way. As you know, the Subdivision Map Act specifically delegates authority to cities and counties to regulate the details of proposed subdivisions. Some of the findings are subjective, and the decision regarding whether they apply to this project is yours. I believe the findings of subsection C and D do apply to this project. Excuse me. The fact that the, quote, corridor or flag-type lot is necessary to fit the proposed 3 lots on the site is evidence that the site is not physically suitable for 3 lots. The fact that there are virtually no other examples within the town of such lot configurations is also evidence that the site is not physically suitable. Actually, I did find one flag lot example just across Union, coincidentally. And if you look at the photos attached to my letter in the desk item, you'll see how appealing that street frontage actually is. And I should apologize, I didn't mean for that letter to be a desk item. I thought I had it in on time for the staff report, but missed it, so you just got it. The applicant's attorney has submitted a letter arguing that the Planning Commission acted in error and did not articulate any facts to support its findings. With all due respect to Mr. Mattioni, this is not correct. The Planning Commissioner stated that they agreed with the testimony and the evidence brought by the neighbors, and both in writing and at the hearings. The Commissioners based their findings in denial in part on that evidence. In considering the project further along the way, although the scale of this project is small in terms of CEQA, I still do not believe that the CEQA documentation completed for this project is adequate. CEQA explicitly requires a consideration of the whole of the action. CEQA does not allow segmentation or piecemealing of the project into parts. I have cited some case law and some language regarding the legal definition of a project under CEQA in the letter you have. The staff responses to the public comments on the initial study MND state that the land use compatibility, and as you heard tonight, the height of the structures, future structures, will be evaluated later under A&S. Deferring the analysis of issues such as land use compatibility to the future A&S action precludes the public from having opportunity and the adequate ability to evaluate those impacts, and is not appropriate under CEQA. For these reasons, adequate findings cannot be made and the project is still not approvable. I ask you to concur with the Planning Commission and uphold the denial of this subdivision. And I would echo the same concern or same comments that some of my neighbors made. We're not opposed to anything happening on this project. Understand the owners have a right to do something. We'd like to see it be more compatible with Panorama and Union, the streets it would actually take access to and really be a part of. So thank you for your time and considering our input, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. Just a minute. Vice Mayor McNutt.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. And I do want to disclose that I did meet with Mr. Schwartz and with Mr. Mitchell and with the applicant and visited the site, and I'm sure everyone else is going to want to do their disclosures at some point. My question for you is the same one as with the previous gentleman, and that is regarding the cul-de-sac. I keep thinking it's going to show up there. The width of the cul-de-sac, since we heard tonight that the actual street area is the same regardless of the full diameter, what is your preference and why? And also, what do you think of the idea, if this were to be approved, of getting rid of the shared driveway concept by having a garage and driveway at the end of the cul-de-sac, as Mr. Jeans pointed out in one of his sample diagrams there?
Sure. First, let me answer the cul-de-sac width question. I have deferred quite heavily to Mr. Mangano on this since he's right adjacent to the site. My overall preference would be for the largest cul-de-sac to meet the standard. The landscape planting strip would certainly match the rest of the street, and I think that would be preferable from a visual standpoint. I don't think a few landscape street trees would be a bad thing around the cul-de-sac. Having that planting strip taken away is one more exception that they're asking for here on the site. So generally, I'd prefer the large one, but I have to say, I think there was a little bit of a misunderstanding at the last Planning Commission about this, because I was under the impression that the smaller radius would be a smaller pavement radius and would not allow public parking on that part of the cul-de-sac. And so part of the reason that many of us, I think, were for the 42-foot width was that it would actually allow for street parking. Not that we want to see it full, but those two homes that would access Panorama have very little room to park on those driveways. So where are the folks going to park? So I think there may have been some misunderstanding amongst us about that at the Planning Commission. I don't know if I answers that part of the question.
And we may ask staff to clarify that after the public hearing portion.
Sure.
And what about the garage and the driveway at the end?
I do want to say I appreciate Mr. Jean's effort. He did come and talk to me early on in the process. Many of us say that we like the idea of keeping, I keep looking above you at the maps, of keeping the end of the cul-de-sac view similar to it is now. For the rest of us down the road, it would certainly keep things more like they are today. So I appreciate the effort on that. Would I be opposed to creating more of a pie at the end of the cul-de-sac? I still am, because when you look at the width of this lot minus the cul-de-sac, it is narrower than the lots from Union through to Panorama. So to me, I agree with the comment made earlier that we're trying to fit something in here that doesn't physically fit. And I think the what I would call a flag lot, quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, is evidence that it doesn't quite fit.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Schwartz, I have a question for you as well. You mentioned in your presentation the Planning Commission and talking about accepting evidence. And I just wondered, from your perspective, one of the conditions we have to consider is whether or not this site can support 3 residential lots. This site that's zoned R8 of minimum 10,000 square feet for each lot. What evidence do you feel was presented that said the site cannot support 3 lots?
I think it's the evidence that I'm talking about, that Tom Mangano is talking about, and I think you're going to hear in a minute from another speaker, about the town's general plan discouraging this type of corridor lot. And again, maybe it meets the technicality of the 30-foot frontage, but it doesn't seem to meet the spirit and the intent of that type of cul-de-sac frontage for a proposed lot. And to me, it seems that this lot is, for all intents and purposes, a flag lot, something we are discouraging in the town general plan, not consistent, therefore it doesn't meet physically, it's not physically suitable.
I understand your perspective. A follow-up on what I just asked then, one of the alternatives, options that was shown earlier showed 2 lots, I'll say bisected, almost triangular, off of the cul-de-sac. That would not be a flag lot. They would have separate entrances, not a shared entrance. Each lot would be 10,000 square feet or above, exceeding the 8,000 square foot minimum. Given that there wouldn't be a flag lot and wouldn't be a shared, thank you, that one right there. Do you have, I guess what I'm looking for is evidence of some sort that violates our subdivision conditions.
When I think of evidence in regards to the findings C and D in the Subdivision Map Act, those items to me are subjective. They are not just about the setbacks and the numbers meeting the minimums. They are also about whether this fits in compatibility-wise with what I would call the neighborhood. Now, I know there's a lot of debate about that term, and we talked about this.
Yeah, we did.
I would disagree with the graphic that's here, that if you're accessing Union and Panorama and there's a physical barrier, both fence and physical elevated wall between Leawood, this is not part of the Leawood Court neighborhood, it's part of Union and Panorama. And from a compatibility, consistency standpoint, it doesn't seem to fit. And that's what I'm talking about in terms of evidence. Does it meet the general plan, the zoning? I guess it does, but to me, that's not just about the numbers.
Okay. Thank you. And I'll disclose now, too, I met with several neighbors and the applicant as well and walked the site 2 or 3 times. Thank you very much, Mr. Schwartz. Any other questions? Nope. Mr. Jeff Mitchell and then Terry Hickey.
Jeff Mitchell, 115 Panorama Way. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Town Council members. I live in the end house on Panorama Way, directly across from the lot on Union Avenue. The view from my front windows is the entire length of this property. I assume you have reviewed the data points and objections already raised with the Planning Commission, so I'm here to speak to the purpose of this meeting. Did the Planning Commission err? The Planning Commission's unanimous decision was based on suitability of the subdivision. Subdivision Map Statute Section 64474 refers to Section 66473.5, which states, "No local agency shall approve a tentative map unless the legislative body finds that the proposed subdivision is consistent with the general plan." Now, the general plan of Los Gatos does contain numerous references, including but not limited to assure that the type and intensity of land use shall be consistent with that of the immediate neighborhood, promote and protect view sheds, avoid abrupt changes in scale and density. In addition, Los Gatos Town Municipal Code Section 292160 conditions of approval states that the deciding body may enforce reasonable requirements more stringent than the minimum zone requirements when necessary or appropriate to ensure a development compatible to and harmonious with the particular neighborhood and the established use therein. References have been made to by the developer to the homes on Leawood and Lassoon Courts. These homes are not accessed by Panorama Way and only relate to Union as a cross street. They do not front Union or Panorama Way. They do not connect to Panorama Way. And the homes on Leawood are physically separated from the Union Avenue property by a full-length wall fence, literally over 8 feet high. It is not only reasonable, but implicit that the intent of the general plan and town codes as to neighborhood applies to the actual streets upon which a development will occur. The Planning Commission knew, as the general plan and town codes state, that the nature of approval is not dictated by measurements and numbers alone. Factoring in the general plan and town code, the Planning Commission made the legally defensible determination that the proposed subdivision is unsuitable as a development on Union Avenue and Panorama Way. Please uphold your Planning Commission's unanimous decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. I have Terry Hickey, followed by Jane DeBella and Orv Busing.
Good evening. My name is Terry Hickey, and I have lived at 100 Panorama Way for 21 years now. Sir. And I've raised 6 kids there. I have 1 left to go. Woohoo. And I just wanted to tell you, I don't have any technical papers or anything. I'm here mostly to support the neighbors and to say that I would hope that each of you would listen to the neighbors and what they have to say, like the Planning Commission did, and not just the person that has something to gain financially from this development. It's very important to us to keep the neighborhood the way that it is and have the housing compatible, and we hope that you will listen to us. So that's all I have. And 2 lots is what we're looking for, 2 single-family homes. Thank you.
Thank you. Jane DeBella, followed by Orv Busing. And that's the last of the cards that I have.
Hi, I'm Jane DeBella, and I live on 118 Cambrian View Way, which is adjacent to the property, proposed development property. I just want to say that I can't see that there's sufficient room to build 2 houses at the end of the cul-de-sac on Panorama. I feel that having a shared driveway would just be major congestion and probably lots of frustration. I can see cars parked in the cul-de-sac and sitting there for days on end, and possibly it would cause safety issues with emergency vehicles trying to get in there and help if they need to. I just really want to ask the town council to please consider the opinions of the people who live and like living in this neighborhood. I really feel that 2 homes is the right decision for this kind of property in this kind of neighborhood. Thank you for your consideration on this.
Thank you. Mr. Busing. Busing with a B? B-U-E.
I'm Orv Busing. I live at 15892 Union Avenue. I am 88 feet 2 inches north of the proposed development, my property. And my property...
Mr. Busing, if you want to move away, you just take the microphone with you.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
My property is this one right here. Next door we have Ms. Lynott. I have lived in the area for 50 years, and on this property for 36 years and have seen a lot of changes during this time period, particularly the amount of traffic on Union Avenue, as we all know. With respect to this property, my wife and I feel that the single-story homes are important to us in the neighborhood. There are no two-story homes facing Union Avenue in the town of Los Gatos along Union Avenue. The other is the view on here in the height. At the present time, this is a view taken today from our back patio. At this point right here is the Leeward Court. When that was put in, it took down quite a bit of our vision of the view. If we put a 30-plus foot house, I know the two-story second middle parcel is intended to be two-story at this time, and by the time you add the floor plan and the other development in the lot, it gets very high, and you can see what would happen. Several references have been made tonight regarding the Ticini property on Union. This was taken from my front corner next door to Ms. Lina on the day or two after the site development started on that property. This is the finished product. Fool me once, I'm not sure about fooling you once or the second time, but I think the planning program in this town really let us down. The story pools showed that the top was going to be about the middle of that tree. Look what happened to us. That is a single-story house by intent. And another issue that I've been bringing up to planning, we have severe drainage problems in this area. Our soil is clay-based. The soil tests show that you can go down 20 feet and it's all clay. As a result, water runoff and the perk problems that we all have sump pumps. The rain of a couple of weeks ago under my house flooded.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Busey, and I appreciate that. Any questions, Mr. Busey? No? Thank you very much. And we have a card from Gregory Holmberg.
Thank you, councilors, staff. My name is Greg Holmberg. I live at 103 Panorama Way. The appellant would like you to approve a project tonight that does not match the composition of the neighborhood that it will be sitting in for the next 40 to 60 years. I'll be brief. I don't feel that we can lightly set aside the unanimous decision of a properly constituted public body like the Los Gatos Planning Commission. Thank you.
I thought you raised your hand there. Thank you. All right, and that concludes the public input part, and we'll now go back to the appellant, who has up to 5 minutes to make any comments he wishes.
Issues such as drainage we'll deal with at ANS, but we have already taken a lot of consideration from Mr. Busing's input, and we're going to significantly improve the drainage in that area. I have to ask, I just fail to understand why this can be an improvement over what we're proposing. Now, this is absolutely legitimate. It's the standard 30-30-30-30 frontage around a cul-de-sac. It actually puts them quite close together here. I don't think it's right in this context. And I was told that they wanted to see low-profile houses. So the reason we're doing what we're doing is to give them exactly what they are trying to achieve in having a low-profile house along the frontage, and I can only achieve that this way. So I'd like you to give consideration to what I'm trying to do and the reason I'm trying to do it, which is to gain separation from Mr. Mangano's property, which here would be just 16 feet from house to house. There's got to be an improvement, surely, in going for 50 feet of separation. So, having said that, I want to go to a different area. And I think I'm going to put a couple of slides up. At the hearing in January, Mr. Michichi said 3 lots was kind of where we were asking the direction to go of the applicant at the 4-lot hearing. Also, as I recall, at the 4-lot application, we directed it to go to 3 lots. Ms. Davis, in the staff report, said there was a previous proposal to subdivide it into 4 lots. The Planning Commission denied it in June '08. The applicant was directed to reduce it to 3 lots, not 2. Mr. Bourgeois at the hearing in February said, this seems to be a project that's going to have to be full of compromises on both sides. The developer wants 4 lots, the neighbors want 2, and we've come in with 3. So they have told us 3, 3, 3. They sent us away to get a CEQA study done, in part because, again, at the same hearing from Bourgeois, there's been some very good thought put into the configuration of these 3 lots to accommodate some of the neighbors' concerns. One of the big concerns is the cul-de-sac and sidewalk, which is the concession we, the applicant, was prepared to make. We originally did not have a sidewalk. I think this 37-foot cul-de-sac with a sidewalk would be good for the neighbors, and I can't see supporting a 42-foot cul-de-sac now. Ms. Talisfor, what we have before us in the 3-lot configuration is pretty well thought out, and I like the 32-foot radius with the sidewalk for the neighborhood added, 37-foot total. I'm concerned that if they come back with a 42-foot proposal, we'll see something we don't like, and we're still going to have to go to CEQA. The reason we were sent to CEQA was because they wanted, the Planning Commission, they wanted the small cul-de-sac and 3 lots. That's what they asked us to do. They said, go get it approved at CEQA, go get CEQA approved, come back so we can go with the 32, 37 with the sidewalk rather than the 42. CEQA took 6 months.
Please. Gentlemen, everybody, we need to refrain. Let's keep this civil.
Items C and D.
Stop. Gentlemen, we need to stop. Otherwise, we'll call a recess. No, we'll.
Excuse me. C and D. 100% compliant. The conventional cul-de-sac is fully compatible. No issues of flag lot or shared driveway. The modified layout works better. The neighbors get a cul-de-sac with a sidewalk, parking that they want. They get better view corridors and lights, certainly than the conventional cul-de-sac. The questions of shared driveway can be pushed back to A&S. If A&S says we can't have a shared driveway, we won't have one. But I think it's appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Jeans. That concludes your time.
Thank you.
Council, questions of Mr. Jeans at the moment. Mr. Brzezinski.
Mr. Jeans. First of all, let me also disclose that I spoke with Mr. Jeans, Mr. Grant, and Mr. Mangiano, Mr. Schwartz, and Mr. Mitchell. Visited the site numerous times, the latest of which was this afternoon. Mr. Jeans, what would be the consequence of your developing on 2 lots rather than 3 in terms of the property development?
Well, it's not economically feasible for Mr. Grant. He has a proposal from a bank that will lend on 3 lots. They will not lend on 2 because they say 2 things. One is we would have to ask you to build larger homes, up around 4,500-foot house, similar to Lausen, similar to the sizes on Lausen, and they didn't think that that was sensible there. They feel that the three-lot proposal is very viable and would create a compatible neighborhood. So I think Mr. Grant would, he wouldn't be able to do it.
Well, from your perspective as the architect, what could you envision as a project, disregarding the financial folks for a second? What would be the project? How would that look in the development if you were to move that way?
I wouldn't change Union much. The house would be bigger. You'd have a 16,000-foot lot and probably a 4,000-foot house instead of a 3,300-foot house. On Panorama, there would be one house. It would be bigger. I'd probably have a lot of problems getting it approved with the neighbors, so I don't know what the result would be. I don't know whether one large house would work.
Well, the question is, what would be the size of house that would be appropriate given the size of lot?
Size of lot, they'd both be around 4,400, 4,500 feet, plus garage.
All right. If I might continue.
Yes.
Have you, in this context, then, envisioned these larger properties in their relationship to the view shed, to the impacts on the neighbors, to compatibility within the neighborhood itself?
It would be a little worse for Ms. Leinert because now the view from her little outside patio would be, as the house gets bigger, so it gets deeper, and she would lose a view that I'm trying to retain for her. As far as Mr. Mangano is concerned, he would lose his view because now there would be a house pretty much 8 or so feet from the property line instead of 37 or whatever it is at the moment. But so instead of looking at a 6-foot fence, he might be looking at a 12-foot plate if it were a one-story. It would be worse for him, but he doesn't seem to see that. No, it would impact no one else on Panorama, except there'd be just a large house when you get to the bottom, which, I don't think is quite right.
Well, I know, Tom, we're looking at the subdivision application.
Sorry?
We're looking at the subdivision application, not ANS. So,
right.
And those are issues that are relative to what's been presented tonight. But from our perspective in the subdivision application, there was a question raised about the term configuration. Configuration was one of the terms in the 7 categories that we had to consider tonight. I think there's some issue with configuration.
Well,
it's been said that by some members of the public that the configuration is not in conformance to the standard configuration of the neighborhood. Is that from your perspective, is that inaccurate?
Yes. First of all, let me just show you what is normally expected. If you put a cul-de-sac here, just like if you have a cul-de-sac here, you don't have the same configuration at the end. You don't. You never do. So you expect a different configuration around the head of a cul-de-sac than you do along the street leading up to it. So now the question is, do you do a conventional pie configuration? And the reason I chose not to was the neighbors explicitly said, and I was reading and listening to the transcripts of the 4-lot subdivision, because I wasn't part of that, they wanted a wide lot here that was compatible with the lots down Union, down Panorama. So I gave them 80-foot, 80-foot. I gave them an 80-foot wide lot here, so I could do a house that is very compatible here. Now, what that does is it brings one house further back, but the alternative is to have, again, a cul-de-sac configuration with option number 1, or a cul-de-sac configuration with option number 2, which gives you better separation. I think the general plan asks me to consider compatibility. It asks me to consider views. It doesn't force me to do it, but it requires me to consider it. And I think I've been doing nothing but trying to consider views. So I think you can't expect the lot at the end of a cul-de-sac to be the same as all the way along. I am not choosing to put this cul-de-sac in. I'm being told to put this cul-de-sac in because this is more than 300 feet long. If this street ended here, you could put a house here and it would be understandable. But if you're putting a cul-de-sac and forcing a cul-de-sac at the end of a street, which the neighbors say make it much safer, it's easier to turn around, and they've got their sidewalks so the people can bike round, the kids can walk round, then you've got to expect a cul-de-sac configuration. Now, I just try and do the best with a cul-de-sac configuration that I can while trying to remain true to the neighborhood. And even if you only look at the local area, you do have a repetitive multi-home situation or multi-structure as you go down here. It's not incompatible.
Follow-up for down right now? Question for you, Mr. Jeans. A moment ago, you made a comment that I believe I heard, if A&S doesn't want a shared driveway, we won't do a shared driveway. What would you do?
I'm going to try to persuade A&S that that's the right way to go, because the...
I understand that, but you said if they didn't want a shared driveway, you wouldn't do a shared driveway, so what would you do?
I would do that. This driveway will go to this house, this driveway will go to that house.
And those homes are in the same position as what you...
All I did was I took the garage here,
right,
and moved it forward a little bit because I need a little more room for turning around. So I pushed it that way a little.
Okay.
And I made that the garage. But now everyone who comes down Panorama is not looking at some nice trees out there. They're looking at asphalt, parked cars, and
understood.
Not as nice.
I was wondering what your solution was to if they didn't want a shared driveway. So that's
yeah,
the solution you proposed.
It solves
right,
it.
I understood. Okay. Next question. Earlier in your first presentation, when you spoke initially, you mentioned the home closest to the cul-de-sac would not exceed 23 feet. And you were talking height at the time.
I thought it would be about 23. I haven't designed it yet. Not fully. I've got it partially designed, and then I stopped when we hit a brick wall. That would be about a 22, 23-foot home. What I'm looking at is a moderately large, moderately tall lower section, and
that's fine.
About
I'm just
a 7-foot upper section.
I'm just addressing the comment you made because some of the comments we've received are about height, about visibility, about light, about issues like that. And what I'm concerned about, for 7 years, I've said 90% of the applications in this town get done over the counter. 5 or 6% get handled at the Planning Commission, and a couple of percent find their way to us. Because what we face are neither black or white, it's gray. Okay, that's what we have before us, gray. And I know personally from when this began a couple of years ago to when I met with the neighbors, to when I met with the applicants, to when I heard testimony tonight, and I've heard different opinions on different legal perspectives, I go back and forth with the 3 lots, the 2 lots, the 3 lots, the 2 lots. One of my concerns is if we go the 2 lots, the homes will be bigger. And that expression, be careful what you ask for. So you go 2 lots, that enables the homes to be, that's enough. Okay? Seriously, one more peep out and you're gone. One of the concerns I have when I look at the 2-lot idea is larger homes, smaller setbacks, heights, square footages, etc. And I think about compatibility there with the homes, especially on Panorama. I look at the 3-lot rendition, And I go back through the 2 years and the comments from Planning Commission about going to 3 lots, about getting to the 10,000 square feet, which is more compatible with the other lots in the neighborhood. And then I get concerned about some of the layouts. So I guess what I'm asking you at this point, Mr. Jeans, and when you say stuff in that microphone, okay, that's public record. So that's why I was asking you about the 23 feet. That's why I was asking you about the shared driveway. So I'm not asking you a question right now. You don't need to respond.
I am comfortable at 23 feet.
That's fine. I appreciate that, and that's a record. It's important to me. I don't want to just approve something tonight or deny something tonight and say we'll slough it off to A&S or the Planning Commission and they'll deal with something. And then the whole community again for a couple of years is dealing with new problems that perhaps our actions created because of 2 lots or 3 lots. So for myself, I'm trying to get some specificity, and in my mind saying, okay, if we go to 2 lots, where are we going to be at? The numbers and heights and things that you've thrown out relate to the 3 lots, okay, and I understand that. But I just wanted to get some clarification on 2 comments you made, and you gave me that. So I'm good. Anybody else? Any questions, Mr. Deans? Nope? Okay, that concludes the public portion. Thank you very much.
I know that.
And no, that's what it is. Okay, we're done there, and we now turn to council to begin the discussion. Vice Mayor McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. We did have some question that came up during the public testimony regarding, again, the cul-de-sac, the amount of space on the street, parking, conformance with other cul-de-sacs. So I saw you over there with your calculator. I wonder if you can clarify for us what's going on here.
Yes, I actually sent a message to our engineer and got confirmation. The paved width is the same with either scenario, and the cul-de-sac would allow parking with the reduced version. The main difference is we're losing the park strip. It doesn't mean we can't have landscaping. We can, in fact, we could potentially have a landscape easement to ensure that there's landscaping along the street.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
Okay, well, I'll start with the disclosure. I met with a group of the neighbors, Mr. Schwartz, Mr. Mangano, Mr. Mitchell. Somebody else was there as well. I met with the applicant and Mr. Jeans and Mr. Grant, and I have been to the property several times. My question to start, Ms. Davis, is when something looks, walks, talks, feels like a flag lot, but isn't a flag lot, can you explain to me why this is not a flag lot or a corridor lot?
It has the appearance of one, but it meets the frontage requirement for a parcel fronting on a cul-de-sac. That's all I can say. If the lot configuration is not appropriate, it can be done in a different manner. This is the way the applicant proposed it, and he's already, I think, articulated the reasons why they did that.
It by definition is not a flagged lot or corridor lot because it provides the 30-foot frontage required for a cul-de-sac, the way our general plan and code is written.
Okay.
So by our definition.
Understood.
Councilmember Spector.
Okay, several things. First of all, I need to turn my microphone on. There's been mention of the council approving or disapproving this application, and what I do first is look at what are the guidelines. We are not approving or disapproving. We are considering an appeal, and the appeal is based on the Planning Commission having erred. So I look at all the evidence in terms of has the Planning Commission erred. In doing that, I go to the Subdivision Map Act and I look at subsections C and D that the Planning Commission used, and C is that the site is not physically suitable for the type of development, and D that the site is not physically suitable for the proposed density of the development. I am fully aware that we have received a letter from the applicant's attorney indicating that actually there's a very narrow set of facts that would satisfy these 2 criteria. I don't take it that narrowly. I think that the Planning Commission looked at facts, and one could look at facts that included the shared driveway, which may or may not be a cul-de-sac, and I'll get back to that in a second. The inconsistent lot configurations, the potential for inconsistent house configurations, the neighborhood incompatibility, all that in my mind is evidence that goes to the Subdivision Map Act. And I'll fold this into my disclosures. I did meet with the applicant, the property owner, the appellant, and walked the property. I also met with 3 of the neighbors whose names I don't have in front of me right now, but 3 of the neighbors, and discussed the issue with them. I found both of those meetings actually very helpful in considering this application, and what I'm doing right now is I'm just sharing my thoughts. I actually don't have a conclusion, and I'm actually very interested in hearing what the rest of the council people have to say. But in meeting with the applicant and the appellant and being on the property, the fact that I drove down Panorama and was able to see the houses on both sides, which is going to be the access to the property, was a significance to me. But then when I was sitting on the property and I saw the high, essentially bluff above me and the houses towering above that bluff, I saw that that was a part of this property also, or could be considered a part of the property also. What was compelling to me also when I met with the neighbors is the amount of thought and research that they had put into all of this, and the passion that they have for their neighborhood. And we see that in downtown, but it's really good to see that kind of passion for the neighborhood in the east part of the town. I think that's really a good thing. And as to getting back to sort of off subject, but the flag lot, does it walk like a duck and talk like a duck or quack like a duck, whatever it is, I think that it could very well be a corridor or flag lot. We're saying that it's the driveway that creates the frontage, but that's a driveway that is currently, as configured, serving 2 parcels. So as I look at the ordinances, and I know that there may be people down there to my right who would disagree with me, and I know he does, but I disagree with him, and I do not think that the driveway creates the frontage which keeps this from being a cul-de-sac or corridor lot. I also understand that that issue can be addressed by 2 different driveways. So as I said, those are my thoughts. No conclusions yet, and waiting to hear what the other council people have to say.
Thank you, Councilmember Spector. We'll look to other opinions, so I'll put in my 2 cents for right now. As for the flag lot, it looks like a flag lot. Okay, that's how I feel. I'm looking at the piece of property. A person has a right to develop on the piece of property. It's zoned for lots as small as 8,000. They're proposing 10,000. There's 2 or 3 different options and alternatives that Mr. Jeans has come up with. What I'm struggling with here you go to 3 lots, and that may not fit in with, certainly not off of Panorama. Okay, that doesn't make sense to me. You go to 2 lots, and the house sizes that are allowed to be built can be an issue. So those issues, agreed, are addressed at A&S and Planning Commission and all the rest. But this is a tough one, and this is why it's here. I understand the evidence that Councilmember Spector was just talking about, and I believe there was some of that in front of Planning Commission, as far as able to say we've considered what we've heard to be evidence. What I have a struggle with is reviewing the notes of a couple of years of Planning Commission and saying we'd like to see 3 lots. And the applicants came back and spent the fees and spent the time and designed it for 3 lots. And then the 3 lots are proposed with lot sizes that are applicable, with setbacks that are applicable, with no apparent variation to guidelines that were given for subdivisions. Yet it doesn't feel right. And I have to be careful about that feel right, and that's the toughest part of our job, because there's this doesn't feel right, but what's allowed to happen. I've got a question for Mr. Korb, if I may, and I'd like your perspective, if I may, Mr. Korb, on the overhead that Jeff Mitchell put up that dealt with a number of issues. I don't know if we have that. Jessica, if you can put that back up or not. Walked through 2 or 3 bullet points, and I understand they were taken from different parts, copied and pasted and put together. Nope. General plan and MAP Act and a number of different things. Yes, that's the one there. And as Mr. Mitchell went down that list and I heard him speak, I found myself agreeing with a lot of what he said. And I'm wondering from a legal perspective if you can share your thoughts as our staff about what's before us and interpretations from your perspective.
Well, ultimately, as was pointed out at the beginning of the hearing, in order to deny a subdivision, you have to be able to make one of the findings that are required by both the government code and by the town code, which essentially mirrors the government code requirements. And when I say government code, I mean the Subdivision Map Act. As I've said in the past, the way that the MAP Act is written, it says if you find any of these facts, you must deny. And essentially what we're saying is that you have to make a finding in order to deny. Otherwise, you approve. The findings are laid out in Attachment 1 of the staff report before you tonight. So I won't repeat what they are. Each and every one of these arguments or these references could fit within any one of or several of those findings. I'm not certain whether they fit within the findings that were made by the Planning Commission. That's ultimately for council to decide. I'm not going to make that decision for you. But in order to make any one of these findings, you have to be able to refer to facts in the record that support the finding. To merely say the proposal, for example, the design or improvement of the subdivision is consistent or arguably inconsistent with the applicable general plan and specific plans is not in itself a finding supportable by law. That's a conclusion. A finding is where you say, this is my conclusion and here are my facts to support that conclusion. Each of these policies is relevant, but what you ultimately have to be able to say is, where are the facts related to these policies and how does that support one of these findings? I don't know if that helps because I'm not giving you the answer regarding how you decide. I'm just telling you the process that you have to go through.
Thank you. So by law, if we can't find the facts, don't believe that they've been put into evidence, presented, then we must deny.
No, the other way around. If the facts don't exist to support the finding, you must approve. Correct.
If we're not able to find, okay. Okay, thank you. Just leave that up there, please. Councilmember Przinski.
Mr. Mayor, speaking to the issue of the Planning Commission's decision, they noted that it was subsection C and D of the Subdivision Map Act that they were citing as unable to be fulfilled and therefore capable of making a denial. My problem with the decision of the Planning Commission came in the motion itself, and that actually references to what the attorney was talking about just a second ago. And if you would pay attention for just a second, correct me if I'm wrong, okay? In terms of the Planning Commission's decision, I saw in the statement of the motion that because of, and I'm quoting now, the testimony that we've heard tonight from the neighbors, the staff reports that we've had, the mitigated negative declaration, all support a finding for D as well. However, it's not my motion, and I do not wish to include D, but that was to include subsection C. The problem I have with that is that none of those three is concrete or specific enough to validate the necessity clause that we're dealing with here. And that is, you have to make a real finding. You have to make cause. And again, the three cited: testimony from neighbors, staff reports, and mitigated negative deck. Now, from a legal perspective, and we are a government of law, from a legal perspective, I would feel that the Planning Commission erred in that when they made their decision, they made it within the context of the subdivision application without actually doing the legal findings. Now, that doesn't preclude us, our doing those findings tonight. But to me, it does call into question the decision of the Planning Commission. First of all, to say the testimony of the neighbors. The neighbors have had multiple responses, and I think very astute responses in so many ways to the issues of this particular proposal. But there isn't a validation here of any particular neighborhood statement that can be pointed to as this is the one that counts, because we can have a lot of testimony, some of which is invalid, some of which is conjecture, some of which is wishful, rather than objective. I think another issue would be then the question of staff reports. Staff report was making when they presented this particular application to the Planning Commission, they presented it as a favorable presentation, indicating the various ways in which the application fulfilled the general plan and its accompanying documents. And then the mitigated negative declaration, I think, only pointed out one area that was of concern, and that was to deal with a particular rodent that exists on this property site, and somehow relocating that rodent because it was a protected species. Those were the issues that I read in the reports and heard in testimony tonight, and also interfaced with the neighbors one-on-one. And I think that for me, that calls into question the decision of the Planning Commission. Now, again, that doesn't preclude the council finding that there are conditions within the MAP Act that can't be fulfilled, but we are looking at the Planning Commission's response, and from those perspectives, I think we have a great deal of difficulty accepting the Planning Commission as having made a decision that fulfills the letter and the spirit of the law.
Thank you, Mr. Brzezinski. And before we continue any further, I'd like one representative from the 8 students that are here to come on up and tell us what school you're from or what class you're involved in. Up to the microphone, sure. I know you need to head out, so I just wanted to give you an opportunity and hear from you.
What am I saying? I'm sorry.
What school are you from?
Oh, we're from Prospect.
From Prospect High, and what class are you in?
We're seniors 2012, or 2010. Oh, and we're from government econ.
All right, well, thank you very much for being here. You picked quite an evening.
Thanks.
Take care. Good night.
You too.
Councilmember Rice.
I'm going to concur with Councilmember Brzezinski in that as I read through the transcripts, my reading of it was that the Planning Commission was headed down one path and then just all of a sudden kind of jumped to a completely different perspective. I'm not sure why, but they did. And just kind of went to emotion without being substantiating what they were saying. That being said, I'm not sure that they didn't get to the right place. One of my friends uses the phrase, they answered the wrong question correctly. When I went out there, the first thing that strikes me is that the property is a part of the Union Panorama line of properties. And my first thought was, this is a lot that legitimately can be split in two. Is it a stretch to put it into three? I don't know. But that's what tonight was all about. I can't find C and D in there. Physically, it's suitable for the type of development and for the density of development. However, when I look at B, the design or improvement of the subdivision is consistent with the applicable general and specific plans, and you look up there, and LP 3.5, assure that the type and intensity of land use shall be consistent with that of the immediate neighborhood. And to me, the immediate neighborhood is Panorama and Union, and that line of houses. To put it up on, to include it with Leawood, physically, it's at a completely different level, and it's separated by a wall that got through at some point in the past. I'm not real sure, but my leaning is that I can make the findings of B based on testimony and the physical nature of the property. I'd like to hear from the other council members.
Councilmember Spector.
A question of Mr. Korb, if I might. Let's see if we agree on this one. Okay, we'll give it a shot. I want you to assume the following. Assume that I could find C and D within the hearing at the Planning Commission, but that they didn't articulate it at the time of making the motion. And assume that I can also agree with what Mr. Rice just said. Would it be your thought that a motion could be made to rectify, or I shouldn't say rectify, to fill in what the Planning Commission had done? Or would your thought be that it has to go back to the Planning Commission? Where would you see a motion going under those assumptions?
Council has the authority to uphold, reverse, or amend the decision of the Planning Commission. If you feel that the Planning Commission decision was in any way deficient, I won't say error or whatever, I'll let you make that decision if you go there, but you feel that there is a deficiency, then you ultimately have the right to make your own decision and make your own findings. As you know, ultimately at the end of every appeal, you adopt a resolution stating your findings with regard to the appeal, and those findings generally address not only the findings necessary to address the Planning Commission decision, but also, depending on where the project is, the findings necessary required with regard to the project itself. If findings are required to approve and your action would ultimately result in an approval, we ensure that those findings are incorporated into the resolution. If findings are required to deny and your ultimate decision is to uphold a denial, your basis could be stated differently than the Planning Commission, the resolution would reflect that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Councilmember Rice.
I meant to mention one other thing, that I thought that a two-lot subdivision, to address something that the mayor brought up with regards to heights and sizes of homes, would also lend itself better to single-story homes on those lots because with a larger lot, you have more footprint with which to work and would protect the view sheds, et cetera, by not discouraging, but not necessitating going to a story and a half or 2 stories. So I wanted to address that as well.
Vice Mayor McNutt.
Thank you. Could I ask staff to put the application comparison back up? I tend to think in terms of matrix, so it's very helpful for me. So where I am going to need some clarification on the thinking of Councilmember Rice is this. If the left-hand column is very rigid, in my opinion, as to what we have to work with. The right-hand side there is a lot of room for judgment calls, and I have a lot of concerns about what happens on the right-hand side, no matter what happens on the left-hand side. I'm equally as concerned whether it's 2 or 3, because I think they both have benefits and major downsides for the adjacent neighbors. So if you agree that only the left-hand side is very rigid, very confined by the rules and the laws that we have to go by, and I look at B, not consistent with applicable general and specific plans, we already have a staff report, and she's already verbally confirmed, and we went through each one of these, that it meets every specification that we have. Also, we have a definition as to what a neighborhood is, that is houses across, 2 on each side, behind, and so on. And there's a little asterisk there that actually I insisted on, that says if there's, topographical issues because we have so many hillside properties that are unusual. I'm not sure that having the houses to the south elevated is enough to trigger that asterisk. So in terms of compatibility, I'm struggling as to why we're only looking at ones to the north. So can you tell me more about how you see B applying on the left-hand side when technically it's compliant, and we still have all that stuff on the right-hand side where there's a lot of issues that relate to B?
Mr. Rice.
I agree with you, and unfortunately, if everything was black and white, we probably wouldn't need to be here. But I would say it does trigger the asterisk. That 8-foot wall and the 5 feet of grade separation, to me, it's a demarcation line between 2 neighborhoods. So the neighborhood compatibility, can you put up the map for me, please? Just pick one. It really doesn't matter which one. Actually, go ahead. No, use the one that you had there for a second. I think that I can agree with this. I think that's a persuasive argument that those cul-de-sacs, the Lesueur Court and the Leawood Court, are separate neighborhoods. They are different in configuration than is that entire block of Union and Panorama. So, besides having an artery between the across the street neighborhood, you have that physical separation between the next door neighborhoods. So to me, the Union, I could almost put Union and Panorama neighborhoods together as a single neighborhood, and this piece of property is a part of it. Yes, it's at the end of it, but if somebody further down Union came to me and said, I want to split my lot that fronts on Union because I have the 120 feet so I can get my 60 feet of 2 lots, I'd have the same issue with that split as I do with this one. Now, add into that I'm going to call it a corridor lot because it visually and functionally is. Whether or not it's a shared driveway is immaterial to me. I see this as a 2-lot subdivision. Now, I feel really bad for the applicant that the Planning Commission kind of led them down the primrose path. As I said, I think the Planning Commission got it wrong several times on this. They got it wrong when they directed them to 3, and they got it wrong on their findings, because physically, I can't make C or D, but I can make B with the general plan. So that's where I am.
Vice Mayor McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. So through the mayor, so
Yes.
You can make it to the general plan. In what way does it not conform to the general plan? To the sections that were...
Yeah, the 3.5, the consistent with the immediate neighborhood. To me, the immediate neighborhood is the Union Panorama neighborhood, right in the middle.
Okay.
Councilman Brzezinski.
To follow your line of reasoning, Mr. Rice, are those specific sections of the government code and the general plan and town code, are they applicable to the subdivision application or to architecture and site? Because I think that it would be important for us to determine whether or not these cited cases are actually, they look to the lot size configuration issue rather than house placement, garage sizes, numbers of stories, those kinds of things. That's one question, and I think that you would have to then tell me where in that code specifically this relates to the subdivision application, particularly given the fact that the Vice Mayor noted that the staff's report and the staff's analysis indicates that all of the different criteria for our moving ahead with the subdivision application is satisfied by this particular project.
Mr. Rice.
I'll defer to Councilman Spector.
Councilman Spector.
I'm not answering for Mr. Rice, but I do concur with Mr. Rice when he says that if it were simply a matter of, putting in numbers and having them spit out, we could all have stayed home tonight and watched the baseball game, and we could put 5 little computers up here and just enter the numbers. But that's not what it is. If you look at the Subdivision Map Act, whether it's B, C, or D, you're looking at making decisions about consistency with applicable general and specific plans, with suitability for the type of development, with suitability for the proposed density of the development. And you're taking those guidelines and you're taking the facts that have been placed before us by the people here this evening, by the record they come up from the Planning Commission, and each one of you is taking those facts and applying them to the wording of this Subdivision Map Act. You are not simply going to the list that was up on the board and just clinking out a decision. We're taking the facts, each one of us, and applying them to the Subdivision Map Act.
Thank you. And I'll add in before going back and forth, or Mr. Rice, your response to the question raised previously. If memory serves me correctly, this is the piece that Jeff Mitchell presented, if I'm correct about that. And it was very persuasive to me. And when you get down to that middle one, Los Gatos General Plan, intensity, type of neighborhood, and all the rest, I compare that to the matrix, the bullet items that Vice Mayor McNutt was saying earlier. When you get into assuring that the type and intensity of the land use shall be consistent with that of the neighborhood, it gets into a discussion we had before on what is the neighborhood, and I think excellent points have been raised, Mr. Rice, about the Leawood, the differentiation there of a cul-de-sac as compared to a straight street, the height difference, et cetera, and on that previous overhead, I could see them also, I agree with you, as being different neighborhoods. And I must say that I'm definitely leaning towards it being 2 lots rather than 3 being appropriate here, for these reasons. And this was the slide that made me think about this in a different manner than what I'd been thinking about before. Did you have a response? No response. Mr. Brzezinski.
Well, I do think we have to come to some kind of agreement on how we define neighborhood in this case, because in our residential design guidelines, it makes it very clear that neighborhood is somewhat a fluid definition. And if you go further down Blossom Hill towards Harwood, that the development that tracks up the hillside, what's the name of that? Summerhill, thank you. The Summerhill development, in effect, is a neighborhood built on pads that each of which is a slope and a certain number of feet higher than the preceding one. Each has a fence that separates it from the property of the other. So I don't think anyone's questioning the fact that that's a neighborhood, because what you've got are a lot of contiguous lots that have grade separation and fencing in between, but we wouldn't call out each house as a separate neighborhood. When I look at this particular property in relationship to that corner lot at Union and Blossom Hill, that corner development, and you do the aerial view, you do have to, as far as I'm concerned, by our own language, you have to take that into consideration as you're looking at neighborhood. Does this mean that those folks who live there never see the folks who live north or west of them? Perhaps. I don't know. Maybe the wall is so large and they're so isolated that they're a little neighborhood unto themselves. But my guess is that that's not the way it is in town usually. And even though Union is a very busy street and is wide at various points, I do know that we have arterials throughout the town that in effect create concise neighborhoods, even though they're separated by an arterial. So I think we really have to, as a council, decide in this case, how do we apply our own rules? Because I have difficulty making that isolation. I find that as I look at that, as I did my drive-through again today, and I drove the entire neighborhood east of the Panorama neighborhood, it seems to me that Panorama is almost defined as a neighborhood of one street. Because when you hit Ann Way, on the north side of Ann Way, there are 2-story homes, and the fact that there is no exit once you go to the south end of Panorama, there's no exit. It's like it isolates that street. When you go on the other side, it seems like there's a whole different configuration, and the house that immediately abuts the eastern end of this property, that large house that in effect creates its own cul-de-sac on the other side, I would assume that home is somehow connected to the Panorama neighborhood as well, that people know each other, that there's some interface. So I have difficulty just looking at Panorama as an isolated single street neighborhood with no connection to anything else. And when I look at that, then my question is, how can we then see this as strictly owned by, in effect, the Panorama Street neighborhood versus what happens south of the property as it goes towards Blossom Hill?
Vice Mayor McNutt.
This is actually a really good discussion. It's always nice when we can get into it. Probably misery for you folks, but so talk to me about Mr. Rice, if you can. The
Teaching to speak up.
yes, the type and intensity of land use that's inconsistent. Because where I get really hung up on this is the lot sizes are about the same. Is it just the fact that they aren't rectangles? Is that the issue? I mean, otherwise we're talking about residential and residential, single family, lot size, lot size. So the only inconsistency is just geometry. Yes? Is that where the issue is?
I certainly think that's part of it. I don't know that that's all of it, but I think that's part of it. I think because of the shapes of the lots, you're going to force a two-story housing, which I'm not sure. I know that's not part of what we're dealing with here, but it is because it's going to force vertical, and I'm not sure that's neighborhood compatible. Compatibility, compatible in the neighborhood, but because of the way I'm defining the neighborhood. Now, I'm going to look to the attorney for a second, and unless there's some legal reason that I can't define the neighborhood the way I'm defining it, that's the way I look at it.
You have your policy. I think Councilmember McNutt described it well, and you give yourself some leeway in the asterisk. The question is, do you agree with regard to the facts supporting the asterisk?
Councilmember Spector. Oh, are you good? No.
Go ahead.
Cut you off. Councilmember Spector.
All right, I'm going to try and get us off center here and struggle through a motion. And I would ask the other council people to take notes in case you want to add, subtract, deny. All right, I'm going to move to deny the appeal on the basis that the Planning Commission did not err. The Planning Commission did not err because under Subdivision Map Act B, that the design or improvement of the proposed subdivision is not consistent with the applicable general and specific plans. And the reason for that is under the 3.5, assure that the type and intensity of land use shall be consistent with that of the immediate neighborhood. And I would also add P15, avoid abrupt changes in scale and density. I'm also going to say that there's C, that the site is not physically suitable for the type of development and that the site is not physically suitable for the proposed density of the development based on facts relating to the inconsistency of the lot configuration, which would lead to inconsistency in house configuration, which was also supported by neighborhood compatibility mentioned in B. And I agree with Councilmember Rice. When I drive to the property, Panorama, Union onto Panorama establishes my neighborhood. I agree that when I was sitting in the back of when I was sitting on the property, I could look up and see the bluff and the tall house, but that was not the neighborhood for the land where the development was being proposed.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion on the floor, and we have second, and now we're looking for some discussion. Mr. Brzezinski.
Can I have a clarification by the motion maker? So you're upholding the Planning Commission on the basis that their decision was validated by the actual substantive findings that they made?
Please.
I'm upholding, and to clarify, given what Mr. Korb told me, I am upholding and amending the Planning Commission because they had facts before them that would apply to the Subdivision Map Act, we had facts put before us this evening which applied to the Subdivision Map Act, and the challenge that the Planning Commission had was their failure to designate when they made their motion which facts they were using under the Subdivision Map Act.
Mr. Brzezinski.
And, but you have expanded those findings, correct, Councilmember Spector?
Yes, please continue.
I have expanded the findings because I agreed with Mr. Rice. I don't know. I agreed with Mr. Rice. I encompassed the information that was given to us by Mr. Mitchell, which I actually thought was great. So I included Mr. Mitchell, I included Mr. Rice, but other than that, I just took the facts that were before us this evening and were before the Planning Commission and incorporated them into an amended motion.
Mr. Brzezinski.
Okay, but I just want to make sure we're clear on this, Councilmember Spector. To say we folded in the information we got tonight is not specific enough, as far as I understand, for validation of the MAP Act denial. And you've added B, I believe, correct?
Correct.
You've added B to C and D. So you do want to include C and D as well, as since we only need to find one. You want to include C and D, since the Planning Commission forwarded that to us, and you're then proposing B as an additional.
Correct.
Okay, and you're citing LP 3.5 and LP
CDP 1.4.
CDP 1.5, correct?
Correct.
And those are for purpose of validating B in the MAP Act?
Well, I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Well, you're trying to prove B, right? And that's the proposal that Councilman Rice brought up, that you want to validate B and therefore deny the subdivision application, and you're citing those two general plan issues, LP 3.5 and CDP 1.5.
Correct.
As your validation for that.
Correct.
And your validation for C and D?
Our validation for C and D, as I indicated, was taken from the evidence provided to us this evening and also provided to the Planning Commission. I did not find this to be new information. The only amendment I made to the Planning Commission is that they failed, in my opinion, to include it within their motion, and that is that the fact that the site is not physically suitable for the type of development and is not physically suitable for the proposed density of the development, based on the inconsistent lot configuration, the neighborhood incompatibility, the inconsistent lot configuration, which would in turn lead to inconsistent house configuration.
And if I might, through the mayor, and inconsistent in relationship to what?
The neighborhood, which I define as Panorama Way.
All right, thank you.
If I may, just for Mr. Mayor, just for purposes of clarification, based on the required findings in the town code for reversing or amending a decision of the Planning Commission, you do have to make a finding of error or new information or an issue or policy. And it sounds as though, without degrading the effort by the Planning Commission, you do find an error, and that error would be, one, the failure to articulate clearly what constitutes the neighborhood for consideration and the facts that support that determination, and two, the additional grounds under the Subdivision Map Act, subsection B, and the policies that relate to those grounds. Is that correct?
The error would be, yes, the failure to incorporate subsection B, and also the failure to incorporate evidence or facts that support the denial under C and D.
Thank you.
And the seconder?
I won't disagree with anything that I just heard.
Okay. Vice Mayor McNutt.
Oh, gosh. I am still having trouble putting those words like changes in scale and density and so on, and applying them to this situation when we have the same type of use, the same size lots, similar size homes. It meets all of the technical requirements, and the only thing that's out of the ordinary is the one access on the cul-de-sac. I legally don't feel that we have justification to turn down this subdivision. So I'm struggling here to try to understand, and I'm just not getting it. So I'm going to not support the motion.
Mr. Brzezinski.
And I'd like to ask the motion maker again, and I'm sorry for being so insistent here, but I think we are concerned about acknowledging the views of the neighbors and respecting those views, and I think that's really significant. And I do think that in the course of these last, well, how many months has this gone on? There has been negotiation take place by the property owner and the neighbors to evolve this in some way. I also feel that the Planning Commission, in my reading of the previous Planning Commission minutes, made statements, didn't necessarily end up in a motion, but made statements about the fact that they were determining that a 4-home subdivision as initially proposed versus a 2-home subdivision that is initially proposed by the applicant versus a 2-home subdivision initially recommended by the neighborhood of Panorama and the Union properties that abut this particular project somehow made itself into a three unit compromise, and then to process this for a series of months and come to the point where the project is denied on the basis that I believe was not substantiated in the motion. And again, we are a body of law, not substantiated in the motion. And to say, well, you know, it's not compatible or it's not consistent, that word is too vague for me. It does not speak to the law. It does not say, to me at least, you know, this is consistent to what? What is this consistent to? You know, my issue is we have to be very sure that the grounds upon which we find are actually substantial. And so that's why I asked the question of the motion maker. What were those inconsistencies? And, you know, is it to the homes that sit along Panorama? Is it to the homes that front Union on the north side? It's, you know, is it because we've discounted those homes immediately south of the property? So that's really my question. And unless I can get a more clear response from the motion maker, then I'll have difficulty supporting the motion.
And I'm sitting literally in the middle. I think one thing that's unfortunate is the last lot being developed is the one that gets saddled with a cul-de-sac. That's the first thing. If this street simply just dead-ended, that would be an easy decision. But for me, I see this last lot, a cul-de-sac is required. In order to get 3 lots in there, it requires what I call a corridor or a flag lot, which I don't think is appropriate. I I too think Panorama Way is the neighborhood, and I look at Los Gatos, the general plan there, LP 3.5, assure the type and intensity of land use shall be consistent with that of the immediate neighborhood. And as I've told neighbors and as I've told applicants, neighborhood is, in my opinion, is not really defined. There's guidelines for what neighborhoods are. Couple of houses left and right, 5 across the street, behind you, left, whatever. But when I look at that map and I walk that site and I look at the corridor type lot, this just doesn't seem right to have 3 lots. And what I'm concerned about, and I share Mr. Prudzinski's concerns, but I've also heard what Councilmember Spector has said, and I believe that B is something that we have the right to apply to this application. And information that the Planning Commission, as far as not defining a neighborhood, I believe is what Mr. Korb said earlier, as far as needing a finding of error. That's where I'm leaning. And that's it from my perspective. Any other council comments or discussion? Seeing none, then I will call for the motion that's on the floor. Does anyone need any further clarification of the motion? Mr. Prudzinski.
Probably it's a clarification from the attorney. If we uphold the Planning Commission, deny this application, this stops the project, correct?
It's a denial of the subdivision application.
Thank you.
That actually does raise a question.
Yes.
Does the motion include a denial of the A&S application because it is dependent on the subdivision application?
Explain to me what A&S is before.
The A&S was for demolition of the structure. If it doesn't include that, then you still have that issue to deal with.
What did the Planning Commission do?
They denied both because they're dependent on one another.
All right. I would be inclined to do the same as the Planning Commission, but I'll look to my seconder.
I'm fine with that for now. Yeah.
You said these are tough. Any further discussion, council? I'll call for the question. All in favor of the motion as made by Councilmember Spector and seconded by Mr. Rice, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes 3-2. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just a reminder to council and to interested parties in the audience, I will be returning to council with a resolution making the findings that finalize council's decision. That resolution probably won't come back to council until the first meeting in December.
Thank you. Agenda item number 12, Chief Seaman. Yes, please, start. Chief, you're on.
Just giving you a break, Mr. Mayor, after a very long discussion. I know it was a difficult topic.
Yes.
Back before you again, and the item before you is staff report to update you on our understanding of the issues that would be associated with implementing a disposal program for unwanted prescriptions prescription medications and also controlled substances, which have to be considered in this conversation. This report was prepared by Captain Elena Forrest. I am presenting in her absence, but the report really is quite self-explanatory. The bottom line is this is a project that could be implemented by the town. It is present in 4 of the cities in Santa Clara County, including the Santa Clara County. Those cities that have their own programs tend to do it for their residents and not. They prefer that it not be for other people just because of the workload. If it were just a matter of turning in aspirin and non-controlled substances for disposal so that they're not put into wastewater or landfills, businesses would do that out of community goodwill. However, one of our businesses in Los Gatos has ended that program because there are complications. People do get rid of controlled substances, which are actually prescription medications. There's also potential that people could put truly illicit controlled substances in these bins as well. And so the one business in our community stopped providing this service. There is a need for people to be able to turn in prescriptions, but if it gets into the realm of controlled substances and it's things like Vicodin that people have in their cabinets as well as cocaine and heroin and methamphetamine, a police officer has to be in control of it. And so it just implies if you're going to do the process legally and fully that there'd be dedicated staff time. I think that some cities are taking these medications in bulk back. They're probably not following the full extent of the law, and if we were to do it, our advice would be to do it fully. That would involve staff time and staff cost and further exploration. As an alternative, what we're proposing is this is something that the county chiefs have wrestled with for the better part of a year now, and it's a little bit of who's going to go first as we talk about it. Some cities, like I said, have started out on their own. We are recommending that if it's your interest that we continue to move forward on this, that we seek to partner with an agency that already has an established program, such as the Sheriff's Department in the County of Santa Clara. I've called the sheriff and have not been able to complete that conversation yet to start those discussions. I don't know how it will be received. The theory of the chiefs is if you're having distributed drop-off centers for people to put things, they have to be secured, and then someone, a police officer or a retired police officer, has to go around and make those rounds, collect them, and then sort them. That if you had shared resources to do that and not every city doing it for themselves, it would probably be a better economy of scale. So we agree that it makes good public policy sense to have a program that collects these medications. How that program is implemented is the question, and so we just want to let you know that we are becoming better informed, but also know that the law and the process or the policies of individual cities are still evolving, and that we would recommend that we take some additional time to seek a partnership to see if we could implement something that would work for our community. The closest center for anyone in Los Gatos is probably Valley Medical Center. Attached to your report are, I think, 10 drop-off locations. Those are typically the counties. There are a couple others from other cities, but most of them are some distance from Los Gatos.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions of our Chief? Vice Mayor McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. And, this is my issue, and I appreciate all the time that you've put into it. I think you made a really good case, Captain Forrest did, for explaining the health and safety risks that these substances pose both to humans and to the environment. So it's a little disappointing to find out really how much work is involved to have an ongoing drop-off program here in town. But I wonder if there's not something that we could do in between here where we are now, which is nothing, and the gold standard, which would be an ongoing drop-off program. And I'm thinking of the household hazardous waste programs where once or 2 or 3 times a year there is a day set aside where residents could come to the new police facility and just clean out their medicine cabinets and get rid of these things so that they don't end up throwing them in the garbage or flushing them down the toilet, and partnering perhaps with both the hauler and garbage hauler and West Valley Sanitation District in some way, since it behooves them to make sure that these substances don't get in the landfills or in the water supply. So is that something that we could look at that would be at least a tippy-toe effort towards where we need to go without having to wait for the process of the chiefs to get through all their discussions?
That would be possible. It would still require that we apply for and get certification from drug enforcement to handle medications in that way, and to the degree that the community expectation for their ability to drop this off is once or twice or 3 times a year, and that they can avoid, or that would satisfy their interest to maybe flush them or throw them away, that's a very credible approach. And we may have an opportunity where individual cities that don't currently do it could join with us, and we could do a shared activity that day for 2 cities together. I'd be very happy to talk to the Campbell chief as one example that perhaps we could do a joint program.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. In the meantime, and I do think, the public is pretty well trained on household hazardous waste. I mean, they know that they can drive to Gilroy and get rid of their paint cans, but they also know that if they wait, that eventually there'll be one in their neighborhood, and they clean out the garage and do that. In the meantime, I wonder if we could post on our website information to residents and, work with KCAT to have a public service spot or something to direct them to Valley Med or any of the other, Valley Med has several locations, so that they know. You start that education process would be very helpful.
Certainly.
Councilmember Brzezinski.
Actually, the Vice Mayor took a lot of what I was concerned about, but I do want to just inquire about one thing, Chief. Valley Medical Center and then the West Valley Sheriff Substation are the most proximate sites for us, I would assume.
I think so. Lenzen Avenue might be close.
Okay. I think the Sheriff Substation is probably closer. But is it the department? Is it your interest in spearheading this program under the police department for publication purposes, for public information purposes, or is this not what you see as part of your role in this particular case?
In most cities, it is the police department that does take the lead, just because of the need to have a police officer involved in the collection and segregation of controlled substances.
All right. So I noticed you took notes about putting this on the website. I might make a recommendation that with staff, you take a look at how we can raise consciousness of the community through various publications beyond the website. And I do agree with the Councilwoman, or the Vice Mayor, that this is an essential thing for us to bring to our community, and probably people will need some stimulus to actually take advantage of the opportunities. So that would be a recommendation that the department follow up with some forms of media beyond, or forms of communication beyond just the website.
Certainly.
Questions of staff? I have no cards on this topic. I have a card now. Citizen Ray, you're up.
What's happened to all the public? Down to one. Wake up, Joe. Marvelous. Joe, to answer your question, the whole idea of the program is to serve the public interest, Joe. Why can't you figure that out? Okay. Now, I want to tell you, as a biologist, environmentalist, this is a marvelous public interest program by the chief, okay? Terrific. I can't see anything, not one iota of negativity, not one. I'll tell you why. Because this past week or so, I went down to CVS, from Long's. I said, I've got these drugs I want to get rid of that I've accumulated over the years. We can't do that. I said, who can? It said, nobody, however, there is one, the farmer whatever it is, the pharmacy up on North Santa Cruz and Main Street will accept drugs, okay? But, you know, that raises the question, do we really want a pharmacy, a retailing pharmacy, to be a gathering place for all the used drugs? Does that make any sense? I'm not sure that it does. I feel much more confident that with the chief of police and his department, and particularly with the new building, he's got all the room to do all these sort of things. I think it's fantastic that he stepped forward. And of course he has the blessing of the town manager, or he wouldn't have stepped forward, I suspect. Okay? That's it.
Thank you. That closes the public portion. I'll look for a motion. The recommendation is to approve the staff report.
So moved. No.
Moved, seconded, all done. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, none. Meeting adjourned.
Mr. Rice. Way to go, Mr. Rice.
Wasn't 4-1, was it?